My great kingdom of Italy. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 426 Ship Purchase Negotiation. In a relatively private room at the State Department in Washington, U.S. Secretary of State John Hay is secretly meeting with a guest. Secretary of State Hay took office in October, mainly because the former Secretary of State William Rufus Day was mainly born in law and was not proficient in the affairs of the diplomatic world, so the former ambassador to the United Kingdom took over. The new Secretary of State Hay also performed well after taking over. During the Paris peace talks, he tried his best to ensure that American interests did not suffer too much loss. Therefore, the next negotiation with Italy on the purchase of ships will still be conducted by this person, Ambassador. The GT. Our country is very sincere this time. Would you like the ambassador to take a look at our quotation? With that said, the new Secretary of State handed a quotation to Ambassador Daggetti. For Ambassador Daggetti, this negotiation with the United States is an opportunity for him. As we all know, the importance of a diplomatic ambassador depends on the status of the country he is stationed in and the relationship with his country. Take Italy as an example. The ambassador to Germany and the ambassador to the United Kingdom are definitely the two highest ranking ambassadors in the diplomatic system, followed by the ambassadors of Austria, France, and Russia, who are in the second echelon, and then the Qing dynasty, the United States, and Japan. The three countries are in the third echelon, and the rest are the ambassadors of other countries. There has been little interaction between Italy and the United States in recent years. So for the GT, this purchase of ships by the United States is an opportunity for him, an opportunity for the Roman princes to see his abilities, for which he must do his best. To go. After receiving the quotation from Secretary Hay, Daggetti frowned as soon as he saw it. Your Excellency Hay, this quotation from your country does not show enough sincerity at all. I don't need to send it back to Rome. I can tell you now that Rome will not agree because the price is too low, and you have not considered the other parties at all. One question is, when you purchase all of our country's new ships, have you considered the many risks and other hidden costs that our country will bear for this? Ambassador Daggetti naturally has the confidence to say this because this quotation is really not enough. In this quotation, the United States offered a high price of $5.5 million for each of Italy's 3 Genoa-class battleships. As for the Garibaldi class, it even offered a price of $7.2 million. The price given by the United States is based on Italy's external selling price plus 10%. In addition to these 6 warships, the United States also paid for a complete set of drawings for these 2 warships, with the total price reaching $42 million. As for why the US government is willing to pay such a high price to purchase packaged Italian warships. In addition to being forced by form, there is also the will of the US Navy. The US Navy, which had just fought against the Spanish and Italian navies operating Italian warships, had a very high opinion of the Italian warships, and believed that the failure of this battle was all due to the performance of its own warships. Our own Indiana-class battleship is rubbish. Various problems occurred frequently in naval battles, which resulted in a huge loss for us in a 3-on-2 battle. As for the Pennsylvania-class armored patrol, don't mention it. Compared with the opponent's Garibaldi, the world's best armored patrol, it is not even worthy of carrying shoes. In naval battles, both firepower output and protection are far behind. This gap makes the bravely fighting US Navy. The officers and soldiers scolded their mothers angrily. At the same time, US Navy officers and soldiers do not trust the 3 Illinois-class battleships still under construction in their own shipyards, saying that they are just modified versions of the Indiana class, and they will still be garbage after modification. Therefore, the US government must also consider the needs of its own naval officers and soldiers at another time. This price would be good, and Italy might agree to it, but not now. Even if this amount of money is equivalent to 60% of the US Navy's military expenditure, it won't work. However, Ambassador Daggetti could not understand the goodwill of the US government, so he also took out a quotation and mentioned it. Your Excellency, Secretary of State Hey, this is our country's quotation for the sale of warships. Please take a look at it. Hey received the Italian quotation, which was much higher than the quotation given by the US government. First of all, the selling price of the 6 warships was about 20% higher than that given by the United States. For example, the Genoa-class battleship is directly priced at $6.5 million, while the Garibaldi-class cruiser is as high as $8.4 million, pushing the total price to $54 million. This gap of $12 million made Secretary of State Hey frown. Ambassador Dagety, your country's offer is too high, and the gap is too big. How can it be considered high? Upon hearing that, Secretary Hey did not directly say that he could not afford it. Dagety knew that this was a joke and immediately defended himself. Your country needs to understand our country's difficulties. First of all, regarding the sale of warships, if our country, in Ambassador Dagety's explanation, how much risk Italy is willing to take by selling these 6 warships to the United States. First of all, the Italian Navy will have a window of at least 2 years for its main battleships. At this time, if a country whose naval strength is not much different from Italy declares war on Italy, it will be impossible for Italy to win without its main battleships. In addition, the officers and soldiers currently equipped by the Italian Navy for these 6 warships are already familiar with the warships. If the United States buys these 6 warships, this will waste the energy and funds that the Italian Navy has already spent on this at this point. Dagety continued. So the sale of this batch of warships cannot be compared with the previous sales by our country, because it will disrupt the deployment and plans of our Navy. The cost cannot be completely paid by our country, and the cost of risks must be taken into consideration. However, despite what Ambassador Dagety said, Secretary of State Hey is also a diplomat. It was impossible to just agree to Dagety's request, and after a round of nonsense conversation, Ambassador Dagety left points. Just that both of them knew that this time they were just informing each other about the prices and first looking at the gap between the 2. After Ambassador Dagety left, Secretary of State Hey left the room and moved to the next room. Within 2 steps there were many people in this room, including President McKinley, Secretary of the Navy Lewis, Secretary of the Treasury Lyman Gage, Presidential Advisor Roosevelt and others. This Roosevelt is none other than the former Secretary of the Navy Theodore Roosevelt. This man is like an immortal little strongman, and his political vitality is quite tenacious. His previous outstanding performances have made President McKinley appreciate him very much, so he became a consultant. Everyone has heard the conversation I had with the Italian ambassador just now. The Italian's price is very high, and it is not easy to negotiate. Hey took a glass of water handed by Roosevelt's advisor, took a sip and spoke to the people present. I heard Italy's request. The price of $54 million is indeed too high. I feel like we can't talk much. The most we can talk about is a price of $50 million, which is the limit. Hey interjected at this time. Finance Minister Lyman Gage turned to the Navy Secretary Lewis, who was silent. Can't your Navy reduce the number of purchases? For example, only purchase 2 battleships and 2 patrol ships. This can save at least $14 million. Such a large amount of money can do a lot of things. The finance minister's words attracted everyone else's attention to the Navy minister, and even the president looked at him point in the face of everyone's attention. Minister Lewis immediately defended himself. Everyone, I have said before that the Navy needs at least 6 warships to protect our country's interests from being harmed. And given that our country's self-made warships are not highly regarded among naval officers and soldiers, we must purchase 6 warships at this time. And Italy happens to have 6, and 4 of them are immediately available. This is very important to know, that we are facing off against the Japanese warships in Hawaii with 6 protected cruisers. We are at an absolute disadvantage in terms of strength comparison. We need these warships to be able to use them. Expand our maritime power immediately. After Secretary Lewis finished speaking, the Roosevelt advisor, who loved the Navy, immediately added, "Everyone, our purchase of 6 Italian warships is mainly to express our country's tough attitude and show its strength. In Hawaii, our country is in a confrontation with Japan. In Panama, our country's negotiations with the French on the canal are not going well. France's attitude towards our country is. Before the war with Spain, there were completely two attitudes. Moreover, the negotiations with the British have stalled. From these signs, we can see that our country has fallen into a state of shrinkage in foreign affairs and cannot expand its own interests for the United States. This is all caused by us underestimating the difficulty of the war with Spain, and this underestimation requires more energy and funds to make up for it. Otherwise the United States of America, which is destined by destiny, will be stuck in a diplomatic quagmire and unable to move. In Roosevelt's narration, the sequelae of the United States' current defeat were immediately revealed. It is obvious that in Roosevelt's view, the United States should not be obsessed with money issues at present, but should give priority to expressing its attitude. Yes, attitude is the most important thing. Even if it loses the war, the United States should express its attitude. It doesn't matter if we lose the battle, we can repair it and start over again. In Roosevelt's view, this is the expression of the American spirit. It is necessary to let all countries know that it is not important for you to defeat me once. What is important is that I can rely on my unique conditions in North America to continue to fight you. If it doesn't work once, it will be twice. If it doesn't work once, then 3 times. It was with this self-confidence that many of the forefathers in the early days of the founding of the United States were able to lead the United States, which was formed from 13 states, into one of the world's powerful countries spanning 2 oceans in less than 100 years. Roosevelt is right. We must make our voices heard. We cannot be intimidated by a setback. The United States of America will not be intimidated by difficulties. It should face difficulties bravely. President McKinley, who had participated in the Civil War, interjected at this time, and his words were the final decision on this ship purchase. Okay, I will talk to the Italian ambassador. Secretary of State Hay also took over the topic. It's very good, but you still have to negotiate a lower price. The US government is not rich enough, and it cannot satisfy the appetite of the poor. President McKinley made a rare wisecrack point. Well, it seems that US ship purchase negotiations are inevitable. It depends on how much the Secretary of State can negotiate. Chapter 427 The hot money for buying ships. Thank you very much, Ambassador Daggett. In his office, Carlo looked at the US ship purchase contract and said thank you to the Foreign Secretary and Navy Minister Admiral Yeagia in front of him. Carlo said this from the bottom of his heart, because although the United States is very eager to buy warships this time, according to Carlo's idea, it would be good to have $48 million US dollars. Unexpectedly, Ambassador Daggett actually talked about $52 million US dollars. This price was really unexpected. Because selling warships is also very important to Italy, it is all money. Otherwise, the Garibaldi, which had just entered service, would not have been returned to the shipyard by the Navy on the grounds that its performance was not up to standard. Moreover, the first ship of the Genoa class, the Genoa, which was about to enter service, has also been postponed, which makes the Navy officers and soldiers who are already familiar with the warship very depressed. Ambassador Daggett, who was far away in New York, had no idea that the results of his negotiations would be praised by the king. Of course, in addition to his unremitting efforts, the eagerness of the Americans is the most important thing for this negotiation, to achieve such outstanding results. But it doesn't matter, you can't take away this credit no matter what. This is all in the service of the kingdom, and I believe Ambassador Daggett also follows this principle. As his superior, Bacona was polite to Ambassador Daggett. This time Ambassador Daggett's performance has given him a lot of face. When there is a suitable opportunity, this ambassador can be given more opportunities to perform. We cannot treat such heroes who have worked hard for the country badly, and must reward Ambassador Daggett well. As you command, Your Majesty. Seeing His Majesty chatting and laughing with the foreign minister made Admiral Yeagia on the side a little anxious, because he heard a bad rumor. So in order to cut off the mess quickly, he decided to take a risk. Your Majesty, our Navy has a lot to deal with this warship sale. We don't ask for anything else. We only hope that Your Majesty can incorporate the money from the sale of the warship into the 5-year shipbuilding plan. Yes, this price for selling warships is too tempting. It is higher than the total amount of the 5-year shipbuilding plan. The entire navy has been eagerly awaiting it for a long time. Admiral Yaji heard the news that the government was also interested in the money, so he planned to determine the ownership of the money. While there were few people point, however, Admiral Agile's idea of cutting the knot quickly was shattered. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw Bacona retorting, "Admiral Yaji, although this money is used by the United States to purchase warships, it does not mean that it must be used for the Navy. The government's finances are currently very tight, so we believe that this money is allocated to the Navy to continue building 3 Genoa-class ships, and after 3 Garibaldi-class ships, the remaining money should be used for other important things." Well, the foreign minister wanted to deprive him of the profit from the sale of the warship as soon as he opened his mouth. So how much money is there that makes government departments jealous of this money? We know that the cost of 3 Genoa-class ships is 76.2 million lire, while the cost of 3 Garibaldi-class ships is as high as 103 million lire. The United States purchase of the ship was 267 million lire, $5.13 lire, and the profit was 87.8 million lire. This money is not jealous of the government. As for the Navy, this money accounts for 80% of its total annual budget. This money cannot be taken away by the government under any circumstances, seeing that the foreign minister proposed that the government should take over the profits, which was okay. General Yaji immediately refuted the opponent. Our Navy has been working very hard to protect the economic development of the people over the years. It is not easy for us to get some extra funds, but your government still comes to grab it. Your Excellency, General, this is not a question of whether to grab it or not, but the government is really short of money. As you saw last year's drought, the government was saddled with 800 million in debt. This money is very important to alleviate the government's financial pressure. Bacona also said there are difficulties on the government's side. If the government is short of money, it can find a way to issue national debt to relieve the pressure, instead of trying to find a way from the Navy. It is much easier to issue national debt than to steal our money. It was rare for Admiral Yaji to be tough on government officials and directly compared the money to the difficulty of issuing national debt. Okay, you two, arguing won't solve the problem. Seeing that the two ministers were red-necked for the money, Carlo quickly dissuaded them. As for the use of this money, I think the two of you should not have such a dispute. Since this money is the proceeds from the sale of warships by the Navy, then this money should be used for the Navy. Moreover, the Navy has added fewer warships in recent years, which is not conducive to our territory. It's safe, so the money should be given to the Navy. Although Bacona was still unwilling to give up, this money was really helpful to Italy's finances, but the king had already intervened, so he could only go back and tell his colleagues not to think about this money anymore. After settling the ownership of the money, there was nothing left to talk about. The two ministers were also busy people, so they said goodbye. Admiral Yaji, wait a moment. Admiral Yaji, who was stopped by Carlo alone, waited until the foreign minister left before speaking. Your Majesty, what are your orders? It's like this. I asked you before, how is the research and development of steam turbines going? You told me that you are researching it, and it has been almost 5 years. Haven't you guys produced results yet? It is not a good thing for Carlo to keep Admiral Yaji, because there is no good news about the steam turbine that he has been thinking about so far, which makes Carlo a little anxious. Of the 3 major elements of a dreadnought, it lacks the speed represented by a steam turbine. Yes, Carlo already wanted the Italian Navy to promote the construction of dreadnoughts. Large caliber naval guns can rely on neighboring Germany and Austria, because the other party's research on heavy artillery is indeed good, and the 3 countries will not fall behind. As for other aspects, it has already been reflected on the Garibaldi level. Otherwise, is the strongest armored patrol just a name? This is demonstrated by real results. Not to mention that its cost is more expensive than that of a battleship. It would be unjustifiable not to take one as the strongest. Your Majesty, if you don't tell me, I want to tell you that the steam turbine is almost successfully developed. According to the report of the Power Research Institute, most of the problems with the steam turbine have been solved, and it is expected that a usable steam turbine will be available next year. Well, what Admiral Yaji said made Carlo don't know what to say. but since a specific time has been given, he can't say anything more. Hopefully we'll see the steam turbines in regular use next year. Definitely. After Admiral Yaji walked out of the palace, his back was wet. Why did he forget this steam turbine? He hurriedly rushed down to the Power Research Institute, saying that there must be a real thing next year, otherwise the fun would be too much. Chapter 428 Petroleum, Part 1. Libya in winter is still so hot except for the northern coastal areas. The sun is scorching on the Libyan desert, creating waves of heat. Although this is the coolest season in the desert, this level of heat still makes people feel uncomfortable. John Robinson poured some water, wet the towel, and wiped his somewhat heated body. He has been in Libya for almost 3 years, and he is tired of seeing all the sand. But that's how work is. You can't choose, based on your own preferences, Mr. Robinson. We have drilled to a depth of 30 meters today, and we are running out of fuel. Assistant Garsha was reporting to him at this time. Thank you guys for me. Today's mission has been completed. Let's continue fighting tomorrow. I hope it won't end up in underground water this time. Let the guys use the fuel carefully. There is no news about the next transportation team. I don't know when it will be delivered. Come on, save some for me. The deputy couldn't answer Robinson's words because they had drilled nearly 30 wells and 14 wells in the past 3 years. Although it is a joy to drill underground water in the desert, they are not a drilling team drilling water wells, but a team drilling for oil. After not being able to find the black liquid they wanted for such a long time, even Robinson, who is known for his experience, had some doubts about whether the Italian oil company had received false information to let them eat sand in the vast desert of Libya. But what does this have to do with him? As a professional driller hired by the Italian petroleum company, he only needs to pay himself on time, so he can continue to do this job. As for the bonus of nearly $40,000 for each well drilled by the oil company, Robinson was looking forward to it in his first year here. But now, only God knows who will get the money. Now I get a monthly salary of $300 from the Italian petroleum company. What's not good about it is that it is much better than at home. Garsha, Christmas is tomorrow. If you have any good stuff, please share it with me. Upon hearing this, Garsha, who knew the virtues of his captain, immediately asked, Mr. Robinson, have you finished your drink again? Facing the deputy's inquiry, Robinson answered without any embarrassment, I can't help it. It's full of sand as far as the eye can see. Without a little alcohol stimulation, I would go crazy, so the wine will be consumed a bit quickly. Faced with Robinson's fallacies, Garsha, who had been with him for many years, was not used to his captain. Here, this is my last bottle. After drinking it, I can only count on the supply team. Taking the bottle of wine, Robinson took a deep breath, as if he could smell the aroma of the wine. Thank you, Garsha. You are an excellent deputy. It's long past time to lead your own drilling team. That way at least you can get more from the company every month. Captain, let's forget it. I know my own abilities. The last time I encountered a blowout, it was you who solved the problem. Since Garsha himself thinks that his ability is not enough, what else can he say? Since you don't want to, then stay with me for another 2 years. Sooner or later you will lead an exploration team by yourself. While the two were communicating, a worker hurried over. The supply team is coming. The worker's words immediately made the camp lively, and all the people who were not on duty gathered. After a while, they saw a long camel caravan appearing in front of them. The leader was an old acquaintance whom I had met many times, the Berber Hakan, as there are currently only over 50,000 Berbers in Libya. They are widely distributed in desert oases, and usually focus on grazing and doing business. It is precisely because these Berbers live in a harsh desert environment and have a relatively gentle temperament that the Italian government retained them and did not pack them away like the Arabs. Of course, when Italy needs to do something in the desert, these Berbers are hired as guides or to transport supplies. As for Robinson and his drilling team, they receive supplies from the supply team once a month. After all, they are deep in the desert, more than 300 kilometers away from the nearest city, Benghazi. Ha ha ha, my old friend, long time no see. After Seeing the supply team, Robinson greeted them enthusiastically, point facing the oncoming Robinson. Diaz, who was leading the team, immediately opened his arms. "I miss you too, my old friend," Robinson asked immediately after the two briefly hugged. "It will go well this time." It wasn't all that smooth. We encountered a strong sandstorm on the way, and we lost a camel and the cargo it was carrying. Upon hearing the news, Robinson immediately asked alertly, "Isn't this lost cargo meant to be brought to me?" "Yes, the 60 bottles of wine you asked me to bring are all on the back of that lost camel." Diaz's words shocked Robinson. "Old friend, I was just joking. I brought your wine." "Old friend, this joke is not funny. You almost scared me to death." "Old friend, I apologize to you. I didn't know you couldn't stand this joke. I invite you to taste our wine." "Very happy to." The two people went to taste the wine without delaying the unloading of the transport team. With the help of the camp people, the goods were unloaded very quickly. As a qualified deputy, Garsha will register each item of goods brought, and then classify and store them according to type point. After everyone has unloaded the goods, a bonfire party is also essential. Everyone sits together, sings and dances, and drinks sweet wine. This is also the most lively time in the camp. Everyone seems to have forgotten their worries and just cheers for this moment of happiness. As for the two old friends Robinson and Diaz, they also sang songs together around the campfire, but judging from their red cheeks and uncontrollable movements, it was inevitable that they had drunk too much. The happy time is always short-lived. When the sun rises the next day, the transport team is ready to set off again. Of course, before departure, team leader Diaz collected many letters as ordered. These were letters written by the drilling team to their families. Diaz was responsible for bringing or collecting their letters every time they came back and forth. After the camel team left, Robinson clapped his hands and shouted, "Okay, let's continue working after enough rest. Try to drill to a depth of 2,800 meters within a week. Let's see if there are any treasures waiting for us to discover below." At Garsha's greeting, a new day of drilling work began. Chapter 429 Petroleum, Part 2. The internal combustion engine on the drilling platform is constantly working, and the drilling team has long been accustomed to the rumbling noise. Some of them seem so ordinary. Only the sound of counting from time to time lets people know how many meters of depth have been drilled. 2789 meters, 2790 meters, counting. Sounds from time to time seems so boring, but it is an essential part of digging a deep well. Especially when the depth of drilling is quite deep, you need to let everyone know every time you drill 1 meter. Because the deeper you drill underground, the more complicated the situation becomes. At this time, you need to report the numbers at any time to keep everyone alert. 2796 meters. Just as the person reporting the numbers reported the current drilling figures, he suddenly heard a pop sound, and then saw the pressure gauge surge, and then the drill bit sank. If there is any situation, go and ask the captain to come over and take a look. It's too late. The pressure gauge is already worth its weight in gold. Sure enough, as soon as these words were spoken, the working platform began to shake. Everyone knew that there was something strong underground rushing towards the ground along the pipe they were drilling. "No, it's a blowout. Call Captain Robinson over quickly. The feeling is much stronger than the last blowout. It's hard to run quickly. I feel like I can't hold it in anymore. It's too dangerous here." They were so panic-stricken that they had no idea that a treasure that had been buried for hundreds of millions of years would soon be revealed. Boom. There was a loud bang, which scared everyone and hid further away. The black liquid broke through the restraints and rushed directly into the sky. Robinson and Garsha, who were on their way, were stunned when they looked at the black spray column that was 100 meters high. "God, there's so much oil down here." Compared to the surprised deputy, Robinson turned around and hugged his deputy. "See, Garsha, we did it," he said, pointing to the erupting oil column in the distance. "If the company doesn't give us double oil production reward this time, I won't be done with them." Let's put the reward aside for now. The most important thing is that we quickly block the wellhead. After regaining consciousness, Garsha quickly stopped his captain from dancing. pointed at the players who were avoiding the oil rain, and hoped that the captain would come up with a solution quickly. Hurry up and call the rest of the people in the camp and ask them to bring the cement. Looking at the oil pillar hundreds of meters high in front of him, Robinson felt a headache when he came back to his senses. He had no confidence in stopping the blowout point. This is indeed the case. After 3 days of rescue work, they had used up all the cement and could only watch the continuous eruption of oil continue to rain. However, apart from being unable to stop the blowout, there is also good news. First of all, the soil is light and low sulfur and is very high quality oil. Secondly, the well they drilled is estimated to eject thousands of tons of oil every day. According to calculations, there are at least 100 million tons of oil fields underground. All this news was quickly spread to Benghazi, to the Italian Petroleum Company, and to King Carlo's desk. In front of Carlo's desk, Mr. Anderson, the general manager of Italian Petroleum Company, listened respectfully to Carlo's instructions. Has the oil well stopped blowing out, Your Majesty? Thanks to the efforts of hundreds of oil workers, the blowout has been stopped. Jane. Carlo summoned the general manager of the oil company precisely because of the good news that Libya was producing oil. It was difficult for Mr. Anderson to talk about it before because he ordered the Italian oil company to invest a lot of money in Libyan oil exploration, and the performance of the oil company was previously ridiculed by many people for searching for oil in the deserts of North Africa. It's better to just look for water. Of course, we don't know what the motivations of these people are, but of course they questioned that the oil company was wasting the funds reported to them by the state, and it was published in several newspapers. Well, now, oil companies have discovered oil in Herige, enough to make people shut up. What are you going to do next? Faced with Carlo's inquiry, the head of Italian Petroleum immediately spoke. Your Majesty, our Italian oil company plans to carry out intensive drilling in the Herige area to expand production capacity. In addition, we will also carefully explore the oil reserves in the area. In addition, we cannot relax the exploration work in other parts of Libya. Anderson is very confident about exploration work in other areas because oil fields are rarely isolated. It is like digging for potatoes. As long as you find one, there must be more. Carlo felt relieved after seeing that his oil company was extremely concerned about Libya's oil production. Now that the oil company has taken it seriously, what else can he say other than encouragement? Of course, for oil companies, the discovery of oil in Libya must be taken seriously. After all, it is close to the mainland, unlike Balikpapan, which is half a world away. Secondly, although the current oil consumption is due to electric lighting, the role of oil is much less. But Anderson is very confident about the future of oil, because oil not only produces kerosene, but also can be used as a fuel supply for internal combustion engines such as gasoline and diesel. It has a bright future. Although there are not many internal combustion engines nowadays, their efficiency far exceeds that of steam engines, which determines the status of their replacement. If you think about the steam engines that are now spread across all walks of life, you can think of the vast market for internal combustion engines in the future, and by then oil will definitely be the indispensable blood of future industries. Of course, oil has a bright future, but it is only the future. But in addition to looking at the future, we also need to look at the present. The current dilemma of oil means that more people must use oil, so the internal combustion engine needs to be promoted as a standard equipment for using oil. This is also one of the main reasons why Rockefeller invested in Ford, to sell oil and promote cars, which is not quite perfect. Of course, this is a far-fetched topic. Regarding the news that Italians discovered oil in Libya, only a few economic newspapers published this news. At this time, the importance of oil has not yet been realized, and even cars are still toys for the aristocrats and rich people. As for the diesel engine, well, mines and inland water transportation both need such powerful internal combustion engines, because in addition to the advantage of high horsepower, the quality of burning waste oil is worthy of praise. The only disadvantage is that the noise is relatively loud, also a bit expensive. Diesel at this time is just waste oil and very cheap. Therefore, everyone ignored the news of the discovery of oil in Italy. Of course, some people have noticed it, but unfortunately, Rear Admiral Fisher who serves as the commander of the British Empire's West India Naval Task Force, is not yet a big shot, so his opinions are not enough to attract other people's attention. Chapter 430 Fiat Taipei. The Fiat factory on the banks of the Po River in Turin is buzzing with people. Today is a big day for Fiat. At least for Giovanni Agnelli and everyone at Fiat, it was indeed a special day. Last year, Giovanni Agnelli decided to rename the Turin automobile factory to Fiat Automobile Factory. For Fiat, led by Giovanni Agnelli, the past few years have been a step-by-step development. Fiat's automobile manufacturing capacity has also increased from 12 vehicles per year at the beginning to 300 vehicles now. However, such results do not satisfy Giovanni Agnelli and the main investors behind it. First, there is the price of the car. The lowest price of the cars previously produced by Fiat has reached 5,000 lire. This price is still out of reach for the general public, because the current salary of the average working class in Italy is only 100 to 140 lire. It requires 5 years of working without food or water to buy one. How can others afford it? Right point of course, the price of 6,000 lire is already a very low price for other car manufacturers. Therefore, unlike other manufacturers, Fiat's cars can only be supplied to the rich and powerful families, but are beginning to reach the middle class high-income earners. It is precisely this that has led to Fiat's booming car sales. However, this does not satisfy Giovanni Agnelli, because cars are still a luxury product and the public has not yet experienced the convenience of this means of transportation. But now, Fiat's new Model A is just the weapon to start using cars for civilians. Mr. Morales, this epoch-making masterpiece is a sharp tool for the automotive industry era, and puts the Italian automotive industry at the top of the world. Agnelli praised the car in front of Morales. In front of them was a brand new car that looked a bit cruder than the various cars currently on the market. The tarpaulin roof, seats made of ordinary mahogany, and frugal details can be seen everywhere. Even the windows and rear view mirrors seem so small. This Type A car is 4.1 meters long, 2 meters wide, and 1.7 meters high. It is equipped with the latest 4-cylinder integrated engine, 2.9L, from the National Power Laboratory. This engine has 20 horsepower and can seat 4 people. And when carrying 200 kilograms of luggage, the car can run at a high speed of 70 kilometers per hour. However, although this car does not look good enough, since Giovanni Agnelli introduced it so solemnly, there must be a reason for it, so he immediately continued to introduce it. In view of the current income situation of the middle class, our Model A car will set off a storm in the automobile industry with an unprecedented price advantage. With a price of 3,400 lire, who can stop its charm? Yes, what makes Giovanni Agnelli so confident about this car is its absolute price advantage point. Although the Type A car has many shortcomings, the price advantage alone makes other vehicles unable to resist its charm. This car is the foundation for the development and growth of the Sofia company. Mr. Giovanni Agnelli, this car is very good. It is an epoch-making masterpiece. As the representative of Fiat's major shareholder, Morales is also someone who knows the automotive industry very well. Otherwise he would not have invested such a large sum of money in Fiat on behalf of the Royal Fund. Currently, 42% of Fiat's shares are held by the Royal Fund, while Agnelli and his friends hold only 24% in total. However, paying such a price also made Fiat become the largest automaker in Italy and even Europe. Yes, with an annual output of 300 cars, it is the largest car manufacturer in Europe. It can be imagined that the European automobile industry has many workshop-style production. However, although Agnelli holds a small share, Morales trusts him very much. In addition to financial supervision, Agnelli is in charge of all matters of Fiat. The price of the Model A is only 3,400 lire, so Morales naturally knows the power of this low-price car. Yes, although the rich and aristocrats will definitely not choose this relatively simple looking car, there are only so many rich and aristocratic people, and how many people are in the middle class and the general public, so this is the key. By the way, Mr. Agnelli, I have a very important question. What is the maximum production capacity of Type A cars? Now, Morales is asking important questions about the car's production volume. Mr. Morals. Our new factory in Turin can currently produce up to 1,500 Type A cars per month. Such a high output is thanks to the division of labor in the assembly line, which allows us to improve efficiency. Anelli danced excitedly when he said this. Mr. Morals, you are really an expert in studying efficiency. This assembly line is indeed worth the money and can greatly reduce the construction time. Anelli's praise of the assembly line is indeed correct, but it is a bit presumptuous. Because although Morals proposed this method, without his efforts to take the management team to watch the slaughterhouses that use assembly lines, design the automobile manufacturing assembly line, and make trial and error corrections, this automobile assembly line operation would not be possible. May succeed. Can the output of 1,500 vehicles satisfy the market? Upon hearing Morals' question, Anelli looked at the other person and replied, my colleagues and I have studied the current market capacity of various countries, and a monthly output of 1,500 vehicles should be able to satisfy the market. Yes, Anelli is very satisfied with the current output of the new factory, which is several times higher than that of other European manufacturers combined. What are you dissatisfied with? Speaking of which, Fiat's new factory covers an area of 50 hectares and has 3,000 employees. It can be regarded as a well-known large enterprise in Turin. From all aspects, Anelli is considered a successful person. The monthly output of 1,500 vehicles may not be enough. You need more production capacity. Morals gave the successful people a slap in the face, thinking that the production volume of this Model A was too low. However, in the face of Morals' opinions, Anelli had a different view. Mr. Morals, we think the production is enough. Our current production is higher than that in the world. Although our Model A is excellent and will cause a sensation, for now, the Model A is enough. We can wait for the Model A sales data to be released before deciding whether to continue to expand production. Okay, Anelli, since you insist, let's use your opinion first. We will decide whether to expand production after the sales results are achieved. After hearing that Morals no longer insisted, Anelli also breathed a sigh of relief, because he did not want to quarrel with the representatives of the major shareholders. Mr. Morals, let's wait for the good news about the sales of Model A cars. Chapter 431. The best-selling Model A car. From the end of 1898 to the beginning of 1899, a Fiat Model A car was born. This car was ridiculed by major automobile manufacturers as soon as it came out. They all said that this Model A car was simply a disgrace to the automobile manufacturing industry. Some people laughed at its lack of horsepower, some people laughed at it for being so simple, and some people laughed at it for being a beggar's car. However, no matter how other manufacturers ridicule it, its price of only 3,400 liras is a huge advantage that no one can look directly at. And such a low price also makes many middle-class people who covet luxury goods such as cars generously spend their money. Suddenly there were more cars on the street, mostly middle-class people driving A-type cars, which attracted a lot of attention. The Fiat Model A also sold out all 1,500 units of the pre-produced Model A within 1 week. Then the dealer sent a telegram urging the goods, which piled up on Anelli's desk. Seeing the telegrams piled up on the table, Anelli didn't expect it, and neither did Fiat's management. Now, the new equipment is being debugged in our newly built factory. The 3,000 newly recruited people are being trained, and we can start work just after the equipment is debugged. In this way, we can produce 3,000 Type A cars in 1 month, which should alleviate the current situation. After hearing the words of the production supervisor, Anelli preached with one hand on his hip. It's still too few. Now our orders have to be produced for half a year according to the production capacity you mentioned. This is absolutely not possible. I have asked people to continue purchasing equipment and continue to expand personnel. I estimate that we will need to recruit 5,000 more people to meet our needs. Hearing Anelli's heroic words, the production supervisor said a little embarrassed, we have almost exhausted the number of qualified people around Turin, so we have to go to other places to recruit people. Then, go and recruit people from other places. We can't keep customers waiting. Anelli felt excited and guilty at the same time. Yes, it was these two feelings. He was excited because no one had expected the booming sales of the Model A car. Guilt is that someone reminded him, but he ignored it. Point of course, this emotion could not stay with him for long, because he was very busy now. In order to cope with the increasing number of orders, Fiat's factory also needed to consider expanding. Just as Fiat continued to expand production with great ambition, in the newly opened Renault headquarters in France, the three Renault brothers were also discussing the impact of the Model A on them in the office. In 1877, Louis Renoir was born into a wealthy businessman family in Paris. Louis Renault was fascinated by steamboats when he was a teenager. For this reason, he designed an efficient steam engine at home and applied for a patent. 21-year-old Louis Renault converted his Didon drag motorcycle into a car that was still rare at the time and drove it to a friend's Christmas Eve party on Roued in Paris. From then on, Renault became famous. Full of Paris society. Louis Renault was the first to speak. Now the whole of Europe is talking about the Model A. Although I have never met Giovanni Anelli, I still admire this man. He rewrote car production. Now is not the time for us to admire. We must also develop a new car that can compete with the Type A car. Otherwise we will be hit to death by Fiat. Look at their sales. 1,500 cars were sold in 1 week. It's crazy. And it only sells for 3,400 francs. So we can only lose money, said his brother Fernand Renault about the company's current urgent needs at present. Renault has only produced 10 cars. When others start selling vehicles in units of thousands, the three Renault brothers are all in trouble. How will they compete with each other next? While Renault was thinking about its own future, Carol Benz was also talking about the Model A with his wife in Germany. I really didn't expect that this young man named Giovanni Anelli has such business acumen that he can make a car with good performance at such a low price. Asked wife Beretta Ringer, you have handed over the management of the company to the people below. Do you still want to interfere? You don't know that the situation is different this time. It only took 1 week for Fiat to produce 1,500 Model A cars and they were sold out. Have you seen such a high sales car before? Carol Benz explained to his wife. Worry. Beretta Ringer knew that this was a company that Carol Benz was worried about. Carol Benz already has too much reputation as the inventor of the automobile. Now the Mercedes-Benz car company founded by himself is focusing on high-end cars and sports cars. Faced with this menacing Type A car, I don't know if the company can deal with this disruptor at Mercedes-Benz. General Manager Benz Jr. is also discussing this Model A car with his assistant. This is a revolutionary car that will enlarge the entire automobile market. It is an amazing car, the assistant asked after hearing that his boss praised this civilian car. Should we also develop one? I heard that many car factories are thinking about this Type A car. After hearing what his assistant said, little Benz said contemptuously, cost is the key to competing with this car. The most important thing for civilian car audiences is price. If you want to gain an advantage in price, you need large-scale industrialization to reduce costs. Fiat now has a factory with 5,000 people. How many people do they have to produce cars? I heard that Volkswagen plans to recruit 5,000 people, which is really a big deal. As a German entrepreneur, it is not difficult to get information about Italy, which currently has very friendly relations with Germany. Knowing that Fiat is building a factory with 3,000 people and the support of the Savoy family behind it, how should I compete in this situation? Could it be that they wanted to win over the Kaiser? But it was a pity that the great Kaiser looked down on their business. According to Benz's own calculations, 80% of the cars in the European market are now Fiat products. This is such a big market. Benz himself is also a car maker, and he knows that there is no car company that can compete with Fiat in a short time. Now European car manufacturers look at Fiat with envy, and they have too many complicated feelings about the Model A car. In fact, not only in Europe, but also in the Americas. No one was surprised when they heard that Fiat dared to sell a car for more than $600. It's incredible how the Italians managed to make such a cheap car. Ford, do you think we should build this kind of car? Being questioned, Henry Ford wiped the grease on his hands and glanced disdainfully at the Fiat Model A driveway in the newspaper. Who would build such a garbage truck with no performance? We need a racing car that can compete with other designers. Only high performance cars are our future. Ford, you are right. We at Detroit Motor Company should prove our ability. Only a car that wins the championship on the track is a good car. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 432, Changing Coal to Oil. The news of Fiat's Model A sales was not only shocking to other car manufacturers, but also gratifying to Carlo. Agnelli is indeed the entrepreneur in Europe who pays most attention to civilian cars. Of course, he cannot do it alone and needs a little push. Carlo came up with the assembly line concept and promoted the low price automobile strategy, which finally launched the Italian automobile industry. What else could Carlo be dissatisfied with? While other countries were still building cars by hand in workshops, Italy had already begun to industrialize and build standardized cars. This is the advantage of crushing point. With this first mover advantage, Italy's leading position in the automobile manufacturing industry can be guaranteed for at least 10 years. Even if other countries follow suit, the first mover advantage is not easy to eliminate. Once the automobile industry is on the right track, Carlo will no longer care about it. After all, he has found the best leader for it. As long as there are no serious mistakes, let it develop on its own. If it was because of too much control, Giovanni Agnelli might have left in a rage, which was not worth the loss, but he had neither the confidence nor the time to pay attention. For example, right now, he is exchanging views on Italy's foreign policy in the Far East with the foreign minister. Your Majesty, the current negotiations between our country and other countries and the Empress Dowager do not seem to be going well. Although she said verbally that there is absolutely no such thing, according to the observations of the ambassadors of various countries, her idea of replacing the emperor has not changed, and the replacement of the emperor will bring the coming turmoil will seriously affect our country's interests in the Far East. For this reason, I would like to send a fleet to visit the Far East to give the necessary warning. Ambassador. Boccona's words represent the diplomatic department's pessimistic attitude towards Far Eastern affairs. That's right, Italy is no longer that country that doesn't care about the politics of the Far East. The reason is that Italy has too many interests in the Far East, and a non-questioning attitude is not conducive to ensuring Italy's interests. However, the effect of trying to intervene was too poor, and there was a feeling that not doing it would be worse than doing it, which made the diplomats feel a little discouraged. What do other countries think of Russia's practice of leasing ports in the Far East? Facing Boccona's topic of the Far East, Carlo did not give a direct answer, but asked about Russia's occupation of the Far East ports. Although Boccona was a little confused as to why the king suddenly asked about Russia's affairs in the Far East, he still answered truthfully. The Russians' actions have currently aroused dissatisfaction from various countries. In response, the United Kingdom directly leased Weihe across the sea. Japan, which is adjacent to it, reacted even more violently. I heard that they plan to continue to expand their navy and army as a response. Since the Far East is still familiar to him, it is best not to move at this time. Carlo thought for a while. I don't agree with the practice of sending a fleet unless all countries send it together. Moreover, our foreign policy in the Far East is consistent with that of other countries. We must not let us take the lead and do everything together with other countries. That's right. Carlo doesn't plan to spend too much energy on Far East affairs. Although the Far East is Italy's largest overseas market, he knows that Europe will be the focus next. Focusing too much energy on the Far East is not conducive to Italy's future interests. Besides, the Italian Navy currently lacks main warships. Wouldn't it weaken its influence by sending some small boats there? Boccona, who didn't get the results he wanted in Carlo, left, while Carlo continued to work hard. After a while he stopped with a report. This is a report from the Ministry of Industry preparing to build a refinery for Libyan oil. There are several refinery sites in the report, such as Genoa and Venice in the north, Palermo, Naples in the south, and even the name of Rome. Obviously it is hoped that Carlo will choose Naples. Carlo, wrote Naples' name directly on the report. There is one reason why Carlo directly chose Naples, because the South needs to solve the population and employment problem, and reconcile the industrial gap between the North and the South, which is what the Italian government must do. While Carlo was working hard, there was a knock on the door, and the voice of the attendant came from outside. "Your Majesty, Admiral Agile is here." Upon hearing that the Minister of the Navy had arrived, Carlo put down his work and responded, "Please come in, Admiral." "Your Majesty, do you have anything to do with me, Admiral?" Agile walked in at a fast pace and asked, "Admiral, I do have something I want to ask Your Excellency about." Carlo didn't hide it, and directly expressed his intention to invite him. "Admiral, what do you think of oil-fired boilers?" "Oil-fired boiler, yes. For Admiral Yaji, he certainly knows about these oil-fired boilers. Currently, the Navy has modified to boilers that use oil-injected coal-fired boilers, and the results are pretty good. As for the boiler that only burns oil, I really haven't paid attention to it. Mainly, traditional thinking is at play. Countries have always used coal as fuel for warships, but coal has many shortcomings. The first is the inconvenience of transportation. Due to the large volume of coal, special coal ships or docks are needed to replenish coal for warships. The second is that the coaling operation is complicated. It takes a lot of time, manpower and material resources to transport coal into the coal bunker on the warship. The third is that a large number of manpower is required. Large warships require more than 10 or 20 boilers. The stoker needs to continuously add coal to the boiler and ensure that the coal can be evenly distributed in the furnace. This requires a large number of experienced stokers to complete. Finally, maintenance is cumbersome. Since coal combustion will produce a large amount of ash, when the boiler stalls, the stoves have to spend a lot of time and energy to remove the ash point. Although coal-fired boilers have so many shortcomings, as the only power source for warships, navies of various countries have no choice. But now, oil has begun to enter the fuel field, and countries have discovered that spreading heavy oil on coal can improve the efficiency of combustion. The Italian Navy also does this, but I haven't thought about the oil-fired boilers the king mentioned. Purely, oil-fired boilers are a new idea for fuel supply. This was not what Admiral Yaji said to deal with Carlo. After the king mentioned it, he really wanted to try the efficiency of a pure oil-fired boiler. Firstly, it is efficiency. Anyone who knows about coal and fuel will know which one is more efficient. Secondly, there is no comparison with the labor problem. More importantly, the smoke problem of both. Except for a few high-quality coals, coal burning produces thick smoke, which makes the smoke column above the battleship very conspicuous and easy to be discovered. Fuel does not have this problem. It burns more fully and has lighter smoke, making it less likely to be discovered on the battlefield. These advantages made Admiral Yaji feel that oil-fired boilers were very feasible, so he planned to ask the Power Research Institute to come up with a plan immediately after returning. He planned to see the effect of oil-fired boilers, but Carlo's words immediately made him feel a chill. By the way, Admiral Yaji, how is your steam turbine development going? Your Majesty, our Naval Power Research Institute is already speeding up the development, and we expect to see the finished product this year. Carlo was very happy to hear that the steam turbine he had longed for had come to fruition. Then, after you take out the finished product, I'll go take a look. Okay, Your Majesty. Your Majesty will be informed by then. Embarrassing. This is chapter 431. Chapter 433. Naval Instructor. The midday sun shone in the room, and Lifa was immersed in writing. Apart from the rustling sound of writing, there was no other sound in the room. Outside the window, the mighty and domineering battleships stood in the port of Taranto, and the whistle sounded from time to time, adding some other sounds to the silent room. Lifa, are you there? Suddenly, a voice came from outside the door, which immediately pulled Lifa back from his thoughts. The voice sounded so familiar to Lifa that he immediately answered, "Gomez, I'm here." After saying that, he opened the door, and sure enough, it was Gomez standing outside the door. "Long time no see, old friend." Gomes stepped into the room, patted his old friend Lifa on the shoulder, and expressed his joy. "Gomez, why do you come to my place when you have time?" Gomes shook his head when he heard Leifa's question. I have no choice. I'm not like you. I can only stay on land without warships. I was originally scheduled to lead the 1st Armored Patrol Squadron composed of 3 Garibaldi-class ships, but you also know that the wealthy Yankee company, the 2 ships that have just begun to be installed, have been purchased. If I want to continue to lead the 1st Installation Patrol Squadron, I can only wait for the completion of the installation patrol of the 3 ships that the shipyard is continuing to build. I hope the Admiral will not buy all the battleships this time. Sell it. At least let us get acquainted with it first. In addition to joking about his own experience, Gomes suddenly changed the subject. But thinking about your 1st battleship squadron, I suddenly feel much more comfortable inside. Well, Leifa's 1st battleship squadron was actually 3 Turin-class battleships. The idea of the Navy's top brass at the time was to serve as the commander of the new 1st battleship squadron after the Genoa class entered service. However, its fate was different from that of the 1st battleship squadron. Gomes is the same. The Americans bought 3 Genoa class ships that were about to enter service at a high price, causing the 1st battleship squadron to disappear immediately, so the 2 of them can be considered to be in the same boat. Point after hearing what Gomes said, Leifa joked. Tell me, what are you doing here? Faced with Leifa's inquiry, Gomes looked at him and said casually, can't I come and see you? I haven't seen you for so long, and I miss you a little. Come on, I still don't know you. Just tell me what you have to say. It was obvious that Leifa did not believe that this old friend was just looking at him. They were all monkeys who had become sperms, and no one should be fooled. Actually, in addition to coming to see you, I also want to get some first-hand information from you about the Battle of San Diego. I know that you are the commander of the battleship formation, so I want some information about the US Navy. Seeing that he couldn't hide it, Gomes told his true purpose. Leifa asked with some confusion. Why do you want information about the US Navy? We have compiled detailed naval battle details into a book. The ministry should have sent it to you. What Leifa was talking about was a routine regulation of the Navy Ministry, which required commanders of Italian warships who participated in naval battles to write a battle summary. The Navy Department will compile a summary of these battles into a book and send it to other captains and formation commanders who have not experienced it. As for the Battle of Santiago, the officers who participated in the battle completed the summary of the battle in half a month, and when they came back, the basic officers all had a copy, and Gomes definitely had a copy. Actually, there is no formation coordination command and combat experience. Just when Gomes was about to say something, he was immediately attracted by the topic Leifa put on the table. I just wrote it blindly. Leifa, who didn't have time to deal with it, immediately defended himself. However, faced with this defense, Gomes showed an expression of obvious disbelief. Someone said before that at least half of the Spanish fleet's victory was due to you. At that time, I also felt that the Spanish fleet's combat style was somewhat similar to yours. Now that I see your topic, I believe it. In that naval battle, you were at least half a commander. Tell me, Command Leifa. Gomez's words made Leifa a little dumbfounded. This is all rumored. If this is not clarified, it will not be his credit for defeating the US Navy. This is not okay. It will make people mistakenly think that he is a person who likes to take credit, which will be troublesome. No one will like this kind of person. Gomez. The fleet is commanded by Vice Admiral Sedela, and I only made a few suggestions, but they happen to be adopted by Vice Admiral Sedela. Leifa's explanation only made Gomes more curious. Then tell me what the suggestions are. Don't worry, you don't know who I am, so you won't talk nonsense. Just tell me. Seeing his friend who was looking for knowledge, Leifa told him, after thinking about it. Say it first. I'll tell you, but don't spread it out. Okay, I can guarantee that. First, it was my suggestion to stop in Cape Verde, then it was my suggestion to attack the east coast of the United States, and it was my suggestion to return to San Diego. Leifa's words stunned Gomez, because anyone who knew the process of the Spanish-American War in detail would know that the stop in Cape Verde was a stroke of genius. The disappearance of the incident at the right time made the Americans suspicious and made mistakes on their own. The subsequent attack on the East Coast was even more spectacular, leading the US Navy by the nose point unexpectedly. These were actually suggestions given by his friends. Gomes was really moved and didn't know what to say. Sedala, who is known as the famous Spanish general, actually deserves more than half of the credit for his achievements. After satisfying his friend's curiosity, Leifer asked him, "You asked me for more detailed information. Do you want to write a report?" "Yes, I wanted to write a report on the maritime power of the Americas, so I wanted to find out the information from you. I didn't expect that you were also writing." At this point, Gomes had a flash of inspiration and immediately spoke. "Are you also going to become an instructor at the Naval Academy in Livorno?" It's nothing more than Gomes asking this, because there is an unwritten rule in the Navy. If a colonel wants to be promoted, he must teach for 2 years before he can be promoted. This provision is actually intended to allow experienced naval captains to learn more theoretical knowledge and understand the latest naval developments and technologies of various countries. After all, there is still a big difference between a school level officer and a general, and they need to be studied carefully. Faced with the question from his friend, Leifer replied, "Yes, I was told to go to Leghorn as a teacher. It's better now. I won't be alone in Leghorn anymore." Seeing that his friends, like himself, needed to go to Livorno to teach, Gomes felt happy. "In that case, I would like to suggest that in order to celebrate our becoming teachers, how about a drink?" Not so good. Chapter 434 The Dawn of the Dreadnought Era. Venice is a famous city in northern Italy, but its economic development has obviously lagged behind the 3 northern cities in recent years. Those who have good intentions refer to Turin, Milan and Genoa as the 3 most prosperous big cities in the north. In fact, Venice is developing well. The light industry is famous for the production of jewelry, jade crafts, lace, embroidery, etc., while the heavy industry is famous for chemistry, coking, fertilizers, steel, etc. However, although Venice is developing well, its development speed is not fast enough compared with the 3 northern cities, so in these years, Venice has gradually fallen behind. The Doge of Venice is not allowed to be hanged. Of course, no matter how behind it is, Venice's shipbuilding industry still has a high status in Italy, because the Venice Naval Shipyard is still the most technologically advanced shipyard in Italy, and one of the Navy's main ship suppliers. For example, the Venice Naval Shipyard is very busy right now. 3 Garibaldi-class ships are being built in 3 docks, and are being built over time. In addition, there are still 2 patrol ships sold to the United States that need to be completed. In addition, the Venice shipyard is also building other warships for the Navy. In addition to warships, the Venice shipyard also undertakes the construction of civilian ships. Taking advantage of the Italian shipbuilding industry's trend of undertaking civilian ships, the Venice Naval Shipyard is not bad at all, and has received many orders for commercial ships. This kind of piling up orders has made the Venice Shipyard extremely busy. Of course, the busyness of the Venice Shipyard is not important to Vittorio Cuniberti, the shipyard's chief ship designer. Sorry, I should add the chief ship designer of the Navy. Since Vittorio Cuniberti is so good, the Italian Navy is worried that someone will poach its treasure, so it has set up such a very bluffing title for this person on a talented designer. What are you looking at? I'm talking about you, Wilhelm II and General Tirpitz. After Cuniberti obtained the title of chief designer of the Navy, apart from a larger office, there were not many benefits to speak of. It's not without its benefits. For example, now, Cuniberti is taking advantage of the benefits to create his own designs. New battleships need to consider new types of artillery. The 305 mm 45 times rapid fire naval gun currently under development should meet the battleship's war needs. Cuniberti wrote here and added that perhaps a new cruiser in the future will also need to use a 305 mm main gun. The reason why Cuniberti added this sentence was the Spanish-American War last year. Although the Garibaldi-class patrols performed perfectly in this war, Cuniberti noticed that the 2 Garibaldi-class patrols did not perform well in the pursuit. Because they encountered the retreating US Massachusetts battleship, the 2 cruisers were overjoyed and wanted to take the opportunity to shoot down the drowned dog and eliminate each other. Unfortunately, even after the two cruise ships fired the remaining 254mm main gun shells, they could not sink the Massachusetts. On the contrary, the Columbus suffered a 330mm artillery shell from the opponent, causing medium damage. Faced with this result, Quirinal considered continuing to increase the caliber of the cruise ship so that it could carry the same caliber as the battleship. However, there is also a worry in doing so, that is, after installing the firepower of a patrol-carrying battleship, what is the difference between it and a battleship? Moreover, this will also cause the armored cruiser to be more expensive than the battleship, which will make the armored cruiser a very expensive type of battleship. Has this changed the original intention of the armored cruiser? You must know that the armored cruiser originally appeared to solve the problem of cash-strapped countries. They wanted both armored ships for decisive battles and cruisers that could carry out raids. In addition, they did not have enough money to purchase these two warships at the same time. As a result, this kind of battleship has developed to the point where it has become a type of battleship that is more expensive than a battleship. Is this still worth it? Quirinal has no answer to this question, and I believe that the navies of various countries have not agreed. However, although I don't know the answer to this question, it still does not affect Quirinal's design of the battleship. Should the warship adopt a twin-mounted 4-turret design with 2 in the front and 2 in the back considering accuracy, or a triple-mounted layout with 2 in the front and 1 in the back that considers firepower projection? Don't be surprised, Italy has developed a triple artillery. The Italian Navy has always attached great importance to the issue of artillery mounting, and the triple mounting developed by Italy is actually very simple. That is, the 2 main guns on the left and right fire first, while the main gun in the middle will delay firing for half a second. Such a design can reduce the recoil of the triple unit and reduce the pressure on the battleship. Of course, the accuracy of firing in half a second this night is not as good as that of a 2 unit, but with 1 more main gun, its shell delivery will be half that of a 2-gun unit. Few navies can resist this temptation. As for why it is a 3-unit installation instead of a 4-unit installation, it is very simple. The 4-unit shell dispersion rate is too high and will widen the width of the battleship, which is not conducive to the high-speed travel of the battleship. Of course, some people must want to ask, since in order to pursue the throwing volume, why not use 4 triple installations, 2 in the front and 2 in the back? 12 main guns. Now there is enough throwing volume. This question shows your level of proficiency. Those who don't know enough about battleship design may actually be asked. With 4 triple mounts and 12 main guns, the recoil during salvo firing has been considered, and whether the battleship's structure can withstand it. Yes, if you want to install 12 main guns, you must strengthen the structure of the battleship, and you must also consider the anti-sinkability of the battleship, as well as other issues. The ensuing problems represent the displacement of the battleship of growing upward. The increase in shipbuilding costs will definitely be higher than the increase in firepower. It can be summed up in one sentence: that is impractical, at least not in this day and age. In fact, warship designers from various countries are like chefs. They need to go to the vegetable market to select ingredients and make the most delicious dishes. In addition, all cooks can enter this wet market, so there is not much difference in the ingredients. This requires considering the chef's skills in selection of ingredients. In the current era, countries can purchase various equipment, even hostile countries. Krupp sold artillery self-tensioning technology to the Allies, and the British Empire sold steam turbines to Germany, which are all examples of this era. Excellent designers must not only consider the performance of the battleship, but also need to consider coming up with the best products within the specified budget. The kind of designer who piles up various excellent performance indicators on a battleship without considering the construction cost will not be recognized at all. Of course, this has to exclude some talented designers. Although they do not necessarily have to comply with the shipbuilding budget, they can definitely come up with warships with the best performance indicators within the budget. Being able to achieve the best design in terms of budget and performance is the difference between genius and ordinary designers. Let's leave this issue aside for now. We will make modifications later, based on the needs of the Navy Department. Quirinal is still undecided, so let's keep it like this for now. The Firepower of warships can be unified to provide sufficient hit rate, but it must be considered that the opponent's warships also have the same shooting method. Therefore, in the future, after the accuracy of firepower of warships from various countries is effectively improved, their anti-attack capabilities must also be fully improved. Consideration. So can the design of full armor protection be realized? Cuniberti considered the issue of battleship protection. Yes, a battleship has three major indicators: firepower, protection, and speed. Protection is a very important thing, which is related to the survivability of the warship on the battlefield. At present, no battleships from various countries, including Italy, have considered equipping battleships with fully protective armor. On the one hand, the full protective armor is too heavy, requiring the battleship to have more horsepower to maintain sufficient speed. I don't need to mention the importance of this speed. For battleships that are not fast enough, just look at the performance of American battleships in the Spanish-American War. It is enough to explain everything. On the other hand, there is the price. In order to take into account the increased displacement of the battleship due to full protection, more boilers and larger reciprocating steam engines were added to increase the speed. Isn't this the case of adding more water to the surface, and adding more water to the surface? Can this increased cost demonstrate combat effectiveness consistent with the increased cost? Well, it's still the same question. Is it worth it? In the past, such an approach was not worthwhile, because countries generally only had 4 first-level main guns, and the penetration depth of the main gun shells was not high, so full protection was not needed at all, and only the most important anti-sinking function of the ship was needed. Just think of a solution in terms of performance. This is why battleships from various countries have only 3 meters of armor installed above the waterline. This is enough. There is no need to install so much armor, increase the displacement, and increase its cost. You must know that armor is very expensive, with a price of up to £200 per ton, so all countries need to consider the use of armor. This price is jointly customized by 2 major armor steel manufacturers, Harvey from the United States and Krupp from Germany. In the face of these 2 major armor steel manufacturers, we can only say that in addition to Italy's own warships, other warships sold to the outside world armor steel must be purchased from them. Yes, except for Italy's own use, Italy cannot interfere with the armor steel. This is also the harsh condition that Italy must accept to obtain Krupp armor steel technology. As for why we need to consider full protection now, it has to do with the contribution of rapid fire cannons and shooting instruments. Warships that were not easy to be hit in the first place are now much more likely to be hit by artillery shells. At this time, if we continue to use the original protection method near the waterline design, then it will definitely be sieved. Although this does not necessarily require sinking the opponent, setting fire and washing the deck can still be done. Facing new problems under the new situation. Fully protective armor is inevitable on future battleships, and Cuniberti needs to take precautions. In terms of armor, if it needs to resist its own 305mm main gun 45 times, then the armor thickness needs to be 280mm. This is the armor Cuniberti calculated after knowing the performance of the newly developed 305mm main gun. And it goes without saying that the command tower, turret, core engine room, ammunition depot, and main armor all need such thick armor protection. In addition, the main deck adopts a dome shape and can be installed with a 3-layer armor design: 15mm, 45mm, and 15mm, for a total of 75mm of protection, which is enough to withstand shrapnel attacks. Cuniberti is considering the issue of deck armor. The deck is equipped with 3 layers of armor, which is beneficial to the threat of long-range artillery shells at oblique angles, because with the development of the times, the distance of battles at sea will become farther and farther. In the past 10 years, the battle distance of warships has been pushed from 3,000 meters to 5,000 meters. In the future, as the accuracy increases, the distance of battles will increase to 7,000 meters and 10,000 meters. Meters are not impossible. At this time, you need to consider that the cannonball strikes at a parabolic angle. Now that the ship has new firepower and sufficient protection, it cannot lag behind in terms of speed. A speed of more than 20 knots is very critical for new warships. Cuniberti wrote this, and then continued writing. After thinking for a while, then the new battleship needs at least 24,000 horsepower to propel it. This new battleship can maintain the ability to sail at high speed, but here he couldn't help but want to revise it, because the reciprocating steam engines currently used in warships can provide the highest speed for a short time. Exceeding this time will be fatal to the reliability and lifespan of the complex reciprocating steam engine. At the same time, the main shaft will overheat and the engine will be overloaded. Even the most experienced engine soldiers will be unable to do anything in the face of these failures. But he thought of another possibility, which was to use steam turbines as a new power source. Cuniberti knew the steam turbine, because King Carlo had always been obsessed with it. Another thing that is very embarrassing for the Italian Navy is that last year, Mr. Parsons, the inventor of the British steam turbine, used a 10,000 horsepower Parsons steam turbine on the 300-ton torpedo destroyer VIP, reached an astonishing speed of 37 knots. And this speed lasted for more than 10 hours, which is really shocking. In addition, Cuniberti also knew that the Navy was purchasing technology from Mr. Parsons. According to his understanding, the two parties had almost reached an agreement on the technology purchase of steam turbines, and the Navy had paid a considerable fee. The technology has since been purchased from Mr. Parsons, of course, in order to avoid embarrassing the Admiralty and His Majesty. This matter was done in secret, and Cuniberti only found out about it by chance. In addition, considering the research on oil-fired boilers currently promoted by the Ministry of Navy, the choice of fuel for new warships in the future needs to be taken into consideration. If this is the case, then the place for storing fuel cannot be selected on both sides of the shipside cabin, but need to choose somewhere else. Cuniberti was making choices and calculations, and finally he came up with a work that was not yet complete. The new battleship was 160 to 170 meters long, the 25th of May 26.3 meters wide, and had a displacement of 18,000 tons 19,000 tons, equipped with 8 2x4 front, 2 at the back layout, 305mm main guns with 45 times magnification, or 9, 3x3 layout with 2 at the front, and 1 at the rear, 305mm main guns with 45 times magnification. In addition, in view of the excellent performance of the Garibaldi class, it is equipped with 18 twin 105mm 50-fold guns on the secondary battery, which are mainly used to deal with small and lethal warships such as destroyers and torpedo boats. In terms of power, 18 oil-fired boilers and 2 steam turbines are installed, providing 24,000 horsepower. Promote the warship's top speed to more than 20 knots. In addition, in terms of armor, the maximum thickness is 280mm on the side, 75mm on the deck, 280mm on the gun mount, 280mm on the front of the turret, and 280mm on the command tower. The armor of the new warship can reach at least 6,000 tons. This is also a historical breakthrough. Finally, after finishing writing, Cuniberti waved his aching arm and closed the notebook in which he recorded. In the notebook, Cuniberti wrote a few letters and a flash, the battleship design plan for the new era. Chapter 435. Naples Refinery. As the largest city in southern Italy, and one of the top 3 largest cities in Italy, Naples has always had a very high status, especially in recent years. With the development of Italian industry, Naples has taken advantage of this trend, and experienced rapid economic growth. After all, the Italian government's tilted investment in the south for so many years has prevented the development of several cities in the south from being left behind by the cities in the north. Naples, in particular, has invested in many companies in recent years, such as Naples Steel Works, the 3rd largest steel company in Italy, Naples Machinery Works, the only diesel engine production plant in Italy and the world, Naples Textile Factory, etc. These factories are all large enterprises, and the workers they recruit are measured in thousands unit. Now, another large company has been added to Naples. Italian Petroleum Company has opened a large refinery here with an annual processing capacity of 2 million tons of oil. Yes, today's refineries that can process 2 million tons of oil are big companies. Of course, Naples has done nothing to keep this refinery that can drive the economy. For example, Naples has opened a special terminal for oil companies to unload and unload oil. The construction of the Naples refinery is also a major event for the Italian petroleum company. Because Libya was found to be producing oil, the Italian petroleum company sent experts, professors and other professionals to carefully conduct a professional investigation of the heir area where the oil was produced. The conclusion was that the area there are at least 500 million tons of oil reserves. Of course, the Italian oil company will not ignore the newly discovered large oil fields. In addition to building an oil pipeline from Benghazi to Heraki, it is also expanding oil storage tanks and oil transportation terminals in Benghazi. It is also purchasing oil at the same time. 10,000 ton oil transport ships were built. Of course, the refineries in Italy are the top priority point to this end. The Italian oil company has deployed elite troops to ensure the construction of the refinery. Molina was the former head of the petrochemical department of the Italian petroleum company. This time he was appointed as the head of the Naples refinery, which he cherished very much. Because this is the time to show off your abilities on your own, to show your abilities to the parent company, and to be promoted to the vice president in charge of a certain part of the petroleum corporation in the future. It can't be overstated. Therefore, after being appointed as the person in charge of the refinery, Molina worked tirelessly to contribute to the construction of the Naples refinery. Dover has the equipment from the United States. Arrived, Molina stood on the site of the refinery, looking at the busy construction workers around him, and asked his secretary, "Director, according to the delivery time given by Mobile, the second batch of equipment should be arriving soon. Please keep a record of this matter. If you need to follow up at any time." "Okay, Director." After some explanations with the secretary, Molina then went to the construction site to learn about the progress of the factory construction. According to the person in charge of the construction site, the refinery can be delivered to them in 2 months. Molina was very satisfied with this progress. After urging him to complete the construction tasks according to quality and quantity, Molina continued to carry out other work. The next step was to inspect the recruitment of employees. Molina left the construction site and drove his beloved Fiat Model A to a temporary recruitment point not far from the construction site. Even without looking at Molina, he knew that there must be a lot of people at the recruitment site. As a result, when he went over and took a look, it was indeed the case here, and the number of people was no less than the previous few times. "Director, why are you here?" The person in charge of on-site recruitment rushed over immediately. After seeing Molina arriving, Molina looked at the situation at the recruitment site and asked, "Why can't I come and take a look?" Recruitment is the easiest thing to go wrong, especially when there are many people in Naples and few job opportunities. The salary offered by their refinery is definitely very popular in Naples. Working 6 days a week, 8 hours a day, you can earn 140 to 180 lire per month. This kind of job opportunity is considered a very good job in the 3 northern cities. Getting to Naples is not about squeezing your head out. If you put the good job benefits in Beijing, Shanghai and Shenzhen in inland places such as Wuhan and Chengdu, it will definitely be considered a high salary. And this kind of high paying job also means that recruiters only need to use a little thought, and then they will have a lot of extra income. Maybe at another time, Molina might not care too much about this, because it can be regarded as a reward. But definitely not now. He needs the recruitment department to select outstanding talents for future work in the refinery, rather than filling his own pockets and giving him some crooked dates through the back door. Therefore, visiting the recruitment site also represents the importance he attaches to it. Although it is impossible to completely avoid certain phenomena, it will at least be restrained. If so, it's our honor for you, the factory director, to come and guide us in our work. Obviously, the person in charge of recruitment also knew some of the plans of his immediate boss, so he did not dare to flatter him. Better show me. Under the leadership of the person in charge, Molina watched the recruitment process on site. Under his gaze, the recruitment site was in order, and the applicants and recruiters got along harmoniously. It was a happy scene. There's still so many people applying for jobs these days. During the inspection, Molina also asked about some situations. Yes, Factory director, because of our salary and working hours, there are no less than 2,000 applicants every day. At present, we have selected almost 3,000 people, and we can complete the job for you, factory director, by selecting another 2,000. It's a task given to us. The selected personnel must meet the conditions I proposed. Faced with Molina's words, the person in charge patted his chest and said, "Factory director, please rest assured that the personnel we have selected have all passed my inspection and will definitely meet your requirements. If there are any problems with the personnel, factory director, just come to me directly." The person in charge of recruitment patted his chest and said he was willing to take responsibility, which made Molina feel more relaxed. Since he dared to say this, it meant that he strictly adhered to the bottom line he had given. How could I not trust you? Otherwise I wouldn't let you be responsible for checking things. While the two were talking, an employee in charge of recruitment hurried over. "Mr. Stamp, there is a small situation here that needs you to handle." The person in charge of recruitment, who didn't call him immediately, felt that this person was too ignorant. Didn't he see that he was accompanying the factory director on inspection? Why did he call him at this time? What's the matter? Didn't you see that I was busy? When the employee heard the person in charge's words and saw factory director Molina beside him, his whole face collapsed. There may be some situation that this employee cannot handle. We might as well go and take a look at it together. Stamp stared hard at the ignorant employee and could only say, "If you don't lead the way, let's see what's going on." The two of them were led by the resentful employee to a rest area, where a man who was obviously not an applicant was sitting there to rest. "Hello, Mr. Stamp and Director Molina." The person who came immediately read out the names of the two people, which surprised Molina, because he had no image of this person in his mind. Chapter 436, The Thriving National Society, Part 1. Perhaps considering the reaction of the two people, the person introduced himself immediately. "I'm Liang Qin, the head of the National Socialist Party in Naples. This time I'm here to ask you for a little help. It can give our National Socialist Party some convenience, so that our party can provide some positions in your factory. Also, please rest assured that we will provide personnel who meet your factory's requirements for these positions, and you can re-inspect them." Liang Qin, the head of the National Socialist Party branch, did not want sponsorship, but wanted to work, which made the two of them feel confused and did not know why. However, they do know a lot about the National Socialist Party. The party has become famous in the South in the past 2 years and has grown rapidly. It is already considered one of the top 3 political party organizations in the South. Point the two of them did not want to offend the local person in charge of such a political party, but they still needed to understand their intentions. Stamp said, "Mr. Liang Qin, although I don't know your intention, your approach makes us a little confused. It's nothing. In addition to sharing the worries of national enterprises, I also want to use this to provide some benefits to the members of our party." This Liang Qin answered so openly that people didn't know what to say. But since the other party has said so, I still have to give him something noodles. After all, the other party is also a local snake. Although he doesn't know how to deal with him, he can't offend him. Just when Stamp was about to give him more than 10 or 20 positions at random, the factory director Molina patted him with his hand and spoke first. "Mr. Liang Qin, we are very willing to ask your party for help. So we also hope that your party can help us find 200 employees." Upon hearing that there were 200 employees available, Liang Qin stood up and said excitedly, "Thank you very much for your help. Our National Socialist Party will never forget your kindness." The position of 200 refinery employees was a great gift for the local branch of the National Socialist Party. These 200 positions can at least add 200 loyal party members to the National Society. How could Liang Qin not know this? "Nothing. I just appreciate your party's ideas. I think individuals must serve the country, otherwise they will not be able to gain a foothold in this world." Molina's words made Liang Qin's eyes light up. This person actually knew their National Socialist Party. This is good news. Maybe you need to get close to this person in the future. "Mr. Molina, if you have time, can I have a cup of coffee with you and discuss this topic together?" I I'm very happy for your invitation, but I'm too busy with work now, so I may have to wait for a while. It doesn't matter, I will wait for your visit. The two were as friendly as good friends they hadn't seen for many years. If they hadn't been there from the beginning, even Stamp would have thought the two were good friends, so after Lianchin left, he couldn't wait to ask, "Director, are you his friend?" "No, I just met him today." "Not as long as you, Moliners." Words directly broke one of Stamp's speculations. "I saw that you two talked so well. I thought you were good friends." "Okay, Stamp, don't be too eager to know about some things." After warning his subordinates, Molyneux left, being close to the National Socialist Party. What was he thinking? He just heard a guess, so he tried it with other thoughts. After all, the National Socialist Party is quite legendary, and its vigorous performance in the South has led to some speculation. Of course, this has nothing to do with him. As for Lianchin, there were also people curiously asking about the same topic. This is also the first time I met the director of the Molyneux factory, although I don't know why he has goodwill towards our party. This goodwill is precious, and we cannot let it down. Obviously, the meaning of this is, don't worry about anything else, as long as it can benefit the National Socialist Party. Get the benefits first. But it is enough to let the head of the dignified Naples branch come to seek sponsorship or something. Of course, in the final analysis, the National Socialist Party is too radical. In the past 2 years, under the leadership of the great party leader Krause, the National Socialist Party has resolutely chosen the strategy of developing southward. He still remembers that the party leader said at that time that poverty in the South is our opportunity. We must eradicate the mafia that oppresses the people in the South and wrest the people from the hands of the mafia. Lianchin burst into tears when he heard this, and at the same time he also recognized this cause with lofty ideals under his leadership. The Naples branch has developed well in the past 2 years and is already the second largest local party after the Democratic Socialist Party. Of course, the National Socialist Party can develop rapidly in Naples. In addition to normal speeches and rallies, the National Socialist Party also has a secret weapon, which is to fight the mafia. That's right, it's the famous Italian mafia. According to the policy of the National Socialist Party, these scum who only know how to do illegal things and suck blood from the people can only have one effect, and that is to fertilize the land. Yes, the National Socialist Party not only said this, but also did it. Because of this idea, the National Socialist Party was targeted by the mafia from the beginning. Actions such as assassinations and setting fire to branches or the homes of National Socialist Party members could not scare National Socialist Party members at all. Their actions can only prove once again that the party leader Krause said that only a dead mafia is a good mafia. Faced with the threat of the mafia, the National Socialist Party immediately launched a counterattack. The National Socialist Party formed a paramilitary organization, the SS, which was a paramilitary organization headed by retired officers or soldiers. A detachment is formed from 20 to 30, and a combat company is formed from 5 detachments, and each division controls 4 to 8 companies. Of course, the mission of these SS units is also to target those mafia families who do evil. In order to avoid improper use of the SS, Krause reiterated more than once that each branch must be cautious in the use of the SS. The mafia family must be identified before the SS can be used to eliminate it. In addition to the SS, the branch must also send a supervision team of no less than 3 people for each elimination operation. The National Socialist Party used the SS so cautiously because they knew the government's tolerance for political parties. For example, even if a fight breaks out between them and the mafia, the government will at best give a verbal warning. But if the mafia is replaced by other political parties, it goes without saying that both political parties will be investigated and punished immediately. If we talk about targeting ordinary people, let alone the law enforcement agencies, severe crackdowns will come soon. Yes. From the government's point of view, if the national society can deal with the mafia, then it can tolerate it, as long as it doesn't go too far. The national society also relied on fighting the mafia to enrich itself. You must know that every mafia family will have a lot of wealth. Why not take out this ill-gotten wealth and distribute it to the people? The National Socialist Party, which controlled distribution channels, relied on this to develop and grow in the South. Point of course, the National Socialist Party also knows its propriety. In areas where the mafia has been eliminated, the National Socialist Party will transfer the SS and will not continue to keep the organization in the local area, making it a target for other parties to blame themselves. However, in this war with the mafia, the National Socialist Party is not yet qualified to claim victory, because compared to the mafia that has existed in the South for hundreds of years, no matter how advanced the National Socialist Party is in its organization, it has only been in this war for 2 years. Still have to fight. Chapter 437, The Thriving National Society, Part 2. Palermo is the core city of Sicily. In recent years, with the economic development and the tilt of government investment, Palermo's economy has grown rapidly. Of course, economic growth also benefits everyone. Wrong, there is also a group of people who suffer economic losses in a manner on the outskirts of Palermo. There are many muscular men wearing windbreakers and looking wary. Their windbreakers were bulging inside, and it looked like they were carrying guns and other weapons. And at a high place outside the manor, there were also people on high alert with weapons. There is of course a reason why the manor is so alert, because inside the manor, a secret meeting is being held. Point in the venue, more than a dozen mafia family patriarchs were meeting to discuss the future of the mafia. Hippie is so rampant now. In Messina alone, 3 small families have been wiped out, and our Camillo family has lost more than 30 people in the battle with Hippie. If this continues, we will all be wiped out. The person who spoke was Camillo Nunal, the leader of the Camillo family from Messina, the second largest city in Sicily. This person is also very famous in Messina. Although he can't be said to cure children's crying at night, the Camillo family is also notorious. Extortion is commonplace, and smuggling and kidnapping are even more proficient. Point. But now this Camillo Nunal is not very good looking. The gauze on his head is from the injury he suffered in a firefight with Hippie. In order to avoid Hippie's pursuit these days, he has been hiding here and there. People are depressed. Point. The black skin in his mouth is the SS of the National Society. This combat team is mainly composed of retired soldiers. Because they like to wear black clothes, they are called black skin by the mafia. Point. However, although he is called a black man, he is a presence that makes the mafia gangsters tremble with fear. Instead of fighting against them without 3 to 5 times the numerical and weapon advantages, they would not be able to touch these black men at all. Point. After all, mafia gangsters usually focus on fighting and extortion. Even assassinations are done when they are not prepared. How can they have the energy and ability to fight head on? Point. And Nunal's words arouse the emotions of others. It's just that these gangsters are too rampant and lawless. No, in Bury, where our family is located, we and one other family are the only ones among the 8 local families. Moreover, our 2 families can only hide in Tibet now. There is no way to do business at all. We can only rely on some of the money we made before. It's impossible to survive this day. This cannot continue like this. Mr. Gomina, you are our mutually recognized leader. Please give us a clear path. With these words, the venue immediately fell silent, and everyone looked at the old man sitting on the chair. This old man was none other than Mr. Dita Gomina, the most respected member of the mafia. He led the Dita family, is currently the most powerful family in Sicily. Point. In addition, Gomina himself is also very legendary. He was a plantation guard under the feudal lord where he started. With the liberation of Sicily during the Italian War of Independence, a group of outside bourgeoisie took over the local lemon plantations, and Gomina was fired. He sent a threatening letter to the new owner of the manor, demanding that he be reinstated. The owner of the manor didn't take it seriously, but the next day he found the newly hired guard shot to death. Gomina returned to the manor and obtained lower land rents for farmers working on the plantations. Farmers on other plantations asked him for help, and Gomina refused no one who came. After that, Gomina further secretly organized a group of brothers in the name of the monastery to continue to frighten the manor owner into not repenting and retaliating. In response, some of the manor owners fled Sicily, while those who stayed paid protection fees to Gomina to maintain order in the plantation. You must know that these people who dare to buy the manor are not the ones who eat fast and chant Buddha. They can force them to leave without paying the protection fee. It is obvious at a glance that they are very clever, facing the gazes of everyone. Gamona, who was already presiding over the meeting, slowly spoke. Everyone, I also know that everyone has been very sad in the past 2 years. The National Socialist Party is like a mad dog looking for trouble for us. We have also used various methods before, such as peace talks, threats, assassinations, firefights and other methods. The result, the other side is determined to have its own way and is always our enemy point. So I feel that we cannot continue like this. We must unite, otherwise we will be defeated one by one. After all, our family basically has dozens or hundreds of people, maybe a few hundred at most. The National Socialist Party has hundreds of thousands of people, and its Lackers Hippie has thousands of people. This force must be united by us to resist the other party's attack. So here I call on you to unite, friends. We have no more power. The road is back. Faced with the appeal of the highly respected Gamona, the Mayfair leaders present did not immediately agree. Because when the National Society began to carry out violence against the Mayfair, someone called for it, but the result was very unexpected and no one responded at all. The reason is simple. Leaders are unwilling to hand over their power. In addition, each family has its own business. How should these businesses be settled after the union? In addition, most families have conflicts, and it is not easy to reach a reconciliation. So the final result is that everyone agrees, but we can't come up with a solution that satisfies everyone, so we can only give up point. But now every family feels the endless malice from the SS. This is a critical moment of life and death. External conflicts have suppressed internal conflicts, so it is a good time to unite. Point, of course, the timing is good, but it will not be easy to achieve a coalition without resolving the issue of interests, for which Gamona continued. As for unity, I think the most urgent thing at the moment is the need for a department that gives orders, a department that can direct everyone to unite us. The people present are all human beings, and naturally they know that they can only be defeated by the black men one by one. So on this point, everyone agrees very much. Mr. Gamona is right. We should have a department that can command everyone, otherwise there will be no way to fight against the Blackskins. Someone immediately asked about this. I have a question, that is, how should this department be organized? Is it recommended or appointed? It was a good thing that someone asked, but no one responded, so Gamona continued. I suggest that we should elect 9 people recognized by everyone to serve as committee members and issue various orders from their point. In addition, whether you are willing to use your family property, business, secret channels, relationships, etc. to join forces can be discussed next. Of course, if there is a willing family, our executive committee can be responsible for evaluating its value and converting it into shares to issue dividends. Of course, this is just my preliminary idea. If you have better suggestions, you can also put them forward for your reference. In addition, I would like to say that our little family is willing to bring our family property and business relationships into the name of the executive committee. In order to resist the invasion of Blackskin, we will do whatever it takes. Gamona's words immediately made many people's eyes brighten, because it would mean that the executive committee has huge power. Of course, this would also mean that, if you want to serve as a member, you will naturally need to give up your family. Of course, the current situation is difficult for all the major families. With the protection of the Joint Executive Committee, the benefits will definitely be higher than fighting alone. Everyone is a human spirit, so they naturally understand this truth. So they expressed their willingness one after another. We would like to join, our family is also willing. It counts as one of our family. Such enthusiastic speeches brought the atmosphere in the venue to a climax. Next, each major family elected 9 committee members, and the respected Gamona became the first chairman of the executive committee. Point, after the meeting, the Mayfair finally united. Of course, the first person to feel the Mayfair's unity was the National Socialist Party. Chapter 438, The Thriving National Society, Part 2. Florence is the location of the headquarters of the National Society. The National Society has been developing very well in the South in the past 2 years. There are voices saying that the headquarters should be moved to Naples, which will be more conducive to the local development of the national society. However, these voices were stopped by the party leader Cruz, because he believed that the current smooth development of the National Socialist Party in the south does not mean that the headquarters will be moved to the south. This is an evasive thinking and is not conducive to the National Socialist Party's success in the south image in the minds of northern people. Therefore, despite Cruz's restraint, the headquarters of the National Society remained in Florence. Of course, with its headquarters in Florence, it would be inconvenient to direct the work of the National Society in the south. So the National Society established a Southern Bureau to facilitate the management of Southern affairs nearby. And today, the Southern Bureau sent a telegram describing an unusual situation. In the recent several clearing operations against the Mafia, the SS troops performing their missions were met with large numbers of Mafiosi, and they all came back defeated. In addition, there were several assassinations targeting members of the National Socialist Party in the South. The above circumstances forced the Southern Bureau to be cautious. After careful investigation, the Southern Bureau found that under their pressure, the Mafia had united and formed a Mafia organization. In addition, there are some politicians and forces in the South who secretly support the Mafia. In response to this shocking news, the Southern Bureau immediately sent a message to the headquarters, hoping that the headquarters would increase its support for the South and at least recruit more retired officers and soldiers to enhance the strength of the SS. Faced with the new situation of the Southern Mafia, Cruz certainly had to pay attention to it and immediately convened a meeting of the executive committee to discuss countermeasures. Everyone, please read this report from the Southern Bureau. In the conference hall, Cruz looked at the executive committee members gathered together and said, before they were destroyed, these vicious Mafia gangsters were fighting hard to subvert our control, to free the people of the South from their clutches. Can we back down? Can we let the Mafia succeed? We can't. So now we need to mobilize more forces and increase the power of the Southern Bureau to sweep those social garbage into the garbage heap of history. After setting the tone for the meeting, Cruz looked to his fellow executive members. If you have any good ideas or suggestions, you can put them forward. When facing Cruz, one of the executive committee members immediately spoke. I have a suggestion. We can find a way from the political party. Haven't we been publishing evidence of Mafia crimes before? We can use this to appeal and request government departments to step up the crackdown on the Mafia. We can start from the official, go to the people and fight against the Mafia. This is not good. If official law enforcement is triggered, evidence is needed. If the Mafia of a family cannot be wiped out, the people will not dare to come forward to testify against their crimes for fear of being retaliated. It is not as good as what we are doing now. As long as it is confirmed that it is the Mafia, we can solve it first and then collect criminal evidence. Our current approach has attracted a lot of dissatisfaction, especially from the judicial department. If Rome had not wanted to use us to deal with the Mafia, our current approach has attracted the intervention of the judicial department. And Rome's patience is always limited. No one knows how long they will tolerate us. Okay, that's right. In fact, all the National Socialist Executive Committee members knew that Rome was using them to eliminate the cancer of the Mafia. Of course, the National Socialist Party was very willing to bear the blame. After all, by being able to become the third largest party in the South, the National Society will gain a lot. At worst, it will be suppressed by various political parties for a few years, but after fighting the Mafia, the National Socialist Society will be many times stronger than when it was first established. Okay, you two. Seeing the two executive committee members arguing, Cruz intervened to stop them. As for whether to bring the government and other political parties into our battle with the Mafia, I think we should avoid it. This will bring more people involved. It is inevitable that there will be mistakes. Secondly, this kind of conflict with evil forces, the work of struggle should be undertaken by our National Socialist Party. This is training our party and there cannot be any relaxation. The people present were all smart, and they immediately understood the meaning of Cruz's words. This fight against the Mafia was just the time for the National Socialist Party to gain its reputation in front of the people across the country. How could other political parties get involved? Then, we will once again mobilize party members to go to the south and work hard to liberate the people oppressed by the mafia. This time, no one has any objections anymore. This suggestion is very versatile. Of course we can't just rely on people. We also need to buy more weapons for the SS who fought bloody battles with the mafia in the south. We can't let these brave people lack weapons. You see, everyone has drawn inferences. Of course, it is a bit taboo for political parties to purchase weapons, but it is not impossible. But it can only be used by the SS. Otherwise Rome will probably not be able to tolerate them. Someone looked at the telegram and said, but the most important thing is to recruit retired officers and soldiers. The telegram sent by the Southern Bureau pointed out this. Let me figure this out. At this time, Cross, the leader of the party, took over the matter. In addition, the Southern Bureau also said that some local politicians and forces are secretly supporting the mafia. How should we solve this? Faced with this problem, the venue fell silent. Because this matter is difficult to handle, the mafia can use the excuse that the other party is a criminal to attack, but politicians and local forces cannot use this method. I suggest that we let the Southern Bureau handle it as appropriate and try to win over local politicians and forces. Of course, if the other party doesn't accept it, it doesn't matter. We can put it aside and prioritize solving the mafia issue first. But if the other party is stubborn, then we can use deterrence means. Cross said this after careful consideration, because the National Socialist Society has been developing in the South for more than 2 years and still has a certain understanding of the South. Some local powerful people and forces like to use illegal means to deal with things, so these people are still connected with the mafia. Of course, no one knows whether the mafia gave him too much, and he couldn't control it. But one thing is very clear, that is, the people and forces that block the economic development of the South are destined to be swept into the garbage heap. Otherwise, how could the National Society be so favored and form a quasi-armed force as a political party to fight the mafia? Of course, Cruz does not think the mafia's counterattack will be successful because they have no idea what they are facing. When the executive committee of the National Socialist Party was meeting to talk about the mafia in a small town called Forum Populi on the outskirts of Bologna, a National Socialist Party preacher was promoting the theory of the National Socialist Party. Everyone, an individual is a part of the country. If an individual is separated from the country, he will be useless. Therefore, the country is the embodiment of the individual's will. Every Italian should serve the kingdom, and the kingdom also has countless such selfless people. With the efforts of many people, it has developed and grown. Since ancient Roman times, we have relied on this concept to build a pan-Mediterranean Roman Empire. And today, the Roman spirit is still with us. The preacher's words immediately attracted a burst of applause. Although the number of people was not large, only 20 or 30, you could tell by looking at the expressions on their faces that this was speaking from the bottom of their hearts. At this time, a young man looked at the time on the clock tower and said to the young man beside him who looked a little big-headed, "Benito, we should go back, otherwise we will be scolded by the teacher." "Wait for me, Joseph." The boy named Benito ran to the preacher and asked, "Excuse me, can I join the National Socialist Party?" "How old are you?" 16 years old. "Sorry, we only recruit people over 18 years old." "Do you have to be 18? "Yes, children must be over 18 years old." "Of course, we can also register you in advance. If you still want to join by then, you can calculate the time to join the party based on the current registration time." This is not a special case of the National Socialist Party, because men must be over 18 years old to join a political party. Currently, all Italian political parties have introduced this method for minors who have a strong interest in their own political parties. After all, it is conducive to absorbing fresh people blood. "May I have your name?" "My name is Benito Amilcar Andrea Mussolini, and I come from Falla." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 439, The Suffering Army. The National Socialist Party's vigorous struggle against the Mayfair in the South is a major event worthy of attention for the political party and the government. After all, it is related to their interests, but for General Simeon, this matter is not worthy of attention, because he can't pay attention to the army's affairs, so he has no time to care about other things. General Simeon, who had just arrived at the General Staff headquarters, began a busy day of work. Chief of General Staff, this is the list for the assessment of the 21st Division. Okay, I understand. Put it on the table. Simeon, who was immersed in work, continued to work without raising his head. Chief of the General Staff, this is the plan for a division-level confrontation exercise between the 5th Division and the 13th Division formulated by the Combat Training Department. Okay, put it there, and I'll take a look. Chief of General Staff, you need to meet with Marshal Cadorna in the afternoon to discuss adjustments to the size of the army battalion and company level. Okay, I know. After the adjutant left, Simone was the only one left in the room immersed in work. Simone's office is quite simple. Apart from his office chair, there is only a sofa, a clothes rack and a file cabinet on one side. There is nothing else. There is also a map of Italy on the wall. Half an hour later, Simone finally finished the work at hand and picked up the assessment book for the 21st Division. If you want to say what scares the Italian army officers and soldiers the most right now, it is the assessment point. In recent years, what Simeon has promoted the most during his tenure is the strict implementation of the assessment system. Before he took office, the army also had an assessment system, but this system was more like a formality and not authoritative enough. After he took office, he was deeply aware of the low combat effectiveness of the Italian army, so he reported an attitude of reorganizing the combat effectiveness of the Italian army and strictly suppressed the assessment system. Every officer needs to be assessed, and it doesn't just take one assessment. There will be an assessment every 2 years, and the difficulty of each assessment increases year by year. If you fail the assessment twice in a row, then I'm sorry, you may not be suitable to stay in the army, so apply for retirement. No one is an exception. Even if you are from a family of military officers, children of nobles must pass the assessment point. For this reason, many officers called Simeon the most stern chief of staff in the history of the army. Of course, this alone is not enough, nor is forceful pressure alone. There also needs to be rewards, and the reward Simeon gives is promotion. Officers who excel in each assessment will have an advantage in promotion and job promotion. For example, for vacant officer positions, officers with excellent assessment results will be given priority to fill them, and the same is true for promotions. In these years, Simeon has promoted the strict implementation of the assessment system, and the combat effectiveness of the Italian army has also continued to improve. In the military exercise between Germany and Italy last year, the 9th Division defeated the 14th Division of the German army in a division-level exercise. This was the first time that the Italian army defeated Germany in a division-level confrontation with non-guards troops, equal numbers and equal equipment. This made the German colleagues look at him with admiration and affirmed the results of General Simeon's re-examination. Of course, these years of assessment have also brought about an effect, that is, Italian officers are more reasonable, and a large number of incompetent officers have retired, making the Italian army more combat effective. A statistic can be mentioned here. Before Simeon took office, the Italian army had more than 500 senior general level officers on active duty. For an Italian army with only 200,000 soldiers, having so many generals is not a good thing. And having so many generals is not a good thing for the army. After all, a division level unit generally has 3 chief officers who are generals, chief and deputy division commander plus chief of staff. With so many generals in the army, many positions are overqualified, which is not conducive to the development of the army. After Simeon's reorganization over the years, there are now only more than 200 active generals in Italy. As for school level officers, a large number of them retired as a result. As for lieutenant level officers, fewer officers failed the assessment. Perhaps it is because most lieutenant level officers graduated from military academies. As long as they are not lazy and goofing off, they can pass the examination with hard work. After Simeon's reorganization, although the Italian army cannot say that it can compete with the German army with the same number of people and equipment, at least it will not be too far behind. Its quality is considered to be mid-range among the armies of the great powers. Of course, Simeon is also worthy of this honor. If you compare it with a photo of Simeon before he became chief of staff, you will find that his black hair has turned white. He looks like he is only in his 50s. Over 60 points. Simone picked up the assessment report on the 21st Division and read it carefully. Admiral Simeon attaches great importance to assessment reports and will review the contents of each report with the most serious attitude. Very good. The 21st Division's assessment results are very good. They are much improved compared to the last time. The infantry and artillery coordination is particularly good. Commander Messert seems to have worked hard. Judging from Simeon's attitude, he was very impressed with the 21st Division. Of course, this also has a lot to do with the small number of divisions currently owned by the Italian army. At present, the Italian army only has a total of 17 divisions. After deducting 5 independent artillery regiments and 3 cavalry brigades, each division has less than 10,000 people, which is really miserable. The reason why the army saves so many people is also caused by the army's insufficient funds at present. The Italian army has annual funding of 203 million lire. Although this funding is not too much, it is not too small either. Unfortunately, this amount of funds is simply not enough for the army. You know, the current emergence of various new technologies has made the army's equipment update very fast. For example, Italy has only recently been equipped with the 1897 75mm field gun. It has fallen behind in less than 2 years. Will the 128 guns purchased by the Italian army be distributed to the troops? The replacement of new weapons and equipment is so fast that the army must invest more funds in catching up. Therefore, in order to save money, the total strength of the Italian army was cut again and again. It was originally guaranteed that there would be 3 fully equipped and fully trained division level troops, but now all of them have been changed to one of the stand-up regiments. As for other units, they were also cut down. The most exaggerated example is that the 7th Division has 2 shelf regiments, 2 infantry regiments that are not full of personnel, plus artillery regiments and other ancillary troops. One division only has about 6,000 people. Of course, this kind of reduction in troop strength and still retaining the establishment is not bad, but it would be really miserable to abolish the troop establishment. And the reduction of its own forces in this way is not only to save money, but also to upgrade weapons and equipment. It is inevitable for the army to cut back on food and clothes. Of course, this state of the army also has a lot to do with the current Italian strategy. Currently, the Italian army only needs to consider land defense against France, as its relationship with France is not very good. With less pressure on the army, there will naturally be less funding. Look at the booming navy next door. In recent years, the proportion of military expenditures has almost caught up with the army. However, this is also the result of the navy's efforts. The benefits that Italy has gained in recent years have basically relied on the navy. In this case, you ask the government not to favor the navy in military spending. How is this possible? Therefore, if the army is to be improved, in addition to Italian finances being relieved, it is only possible if Italy faces land pressure. Of course, the army does not want to see this problem either. After all, when war comes, no one will have an easy time, and neither of the 2 neighboring big countries is easy to deal with. Chapter 440 Submarine. On the sea, a warship was speeding rapidly. Its speed was so fast that the Eagle, which was following behind it at a speed of up to 23 knots, could not catch up. On the Eagle, more than a dozen naval officers were observing the fast-moving warship. The Lombardy is so fast. An officer looked at the Lombardy protective cruiser speeding in the distance and couldn't help but praise it. Of course it's fast. With 10,000 horsepower installed on a 1,000-ton reconnaissance cruiser, it won't be slow. The officer on the side retorted, "What? I said fast is the absolute speed of the Lombardy. It has been 2 hours, and the Lombardy can still maintain a high speed of 32 knots. This was simply unbelievable in the past. So I say that steam turbines are the future warship's main power equipment. This is not necessarily true. Who can say clearly about the future? Steam turbines look good now, but who can imagine whether there will be new power equipment in the future? I feel that diesel engines are excellent power equipment in the future. The conversation between the two attracted the attention of other officers. Suddenly someone coughed twice on purpose, and the two officers who were talking eloquently stopped their speeches immediately. They saw a group of people appearing in front of them from the command tower, where the ship had a better observation position. Your Majesty, you have also seen that the steam turbine equipped on the Lombardy is a new type of power equipment developed by our Naval Power Institute. This equipment has a power of up to 10,000 horsepower and can maintain full output for a long time. For our naval ships, it plays a very huge role. Admiral Yagia, the Minister of the Navy, was eloquently introducing to Carlo the Lombardy, which was equipped with a steam turbine and was sailing at high speed in the distance. Thank you to the researchers of the Naval Power Station for your hard work. On behalf of the kingdom, I would like to express my gratitude to you. Carlo pulled the director of the power station beside him. The embarrassment on the director's face flashed across his face, but he could not avoid the king's enthusiasm and could only keep smiling to cover up his embarrassment. That's right, this steam turbine was really built by the Naval Power Research Institute. It is similar to the steam turbine of Parsons Company of the British Empire, both of which have 10,000 horsepower. But to say that it was derived from his own research would embarrass the director of the Naval Power Station. Think about it. You have spent a lot of manpower and material resources, but the result is not as fast as others who spend less. In addition, in order to complete the goal plan, you need to purchase technology from the other party. For everyone who wants to lose face, this is really an unspeakable thing. But sometimes things are like this. A genius flash of inspiration is more effective than other people's hard work. There is no need for this kind of frustration. Of course, for the current director of the Power Research Institute, it would be better if this damn inspection, which was like a public execution, ended as soon as possible to get himself out of this bad state. But it was obvious that the king did not hear his voice. Mr. Rudanev, how long can your steam turbine keep running at full speed? Carlo's question forced the director of the Power Research Institute to answer, and he forced a smile on his face. Your Majesty, this steam turbine can guarantee this kind of full speed operation for 12 hours. We have tested it on land, and the effect is amazingly good. It's really good. It can run for such a long time. It is indeed an epoch-making power equipment. Facing Carlo's exclamation, Admiral Yager on the side immediately agreed. Your Majesty is right. This kind of power that can operate at full capacity for a long time is exactly what the Navy urgently needs. With steam turbines, naval warships have more choices, no matter what mission they are in. Admiral Yaji was right. The Navy is already considering installing steam turbines on more warships after the Lombardy test is completed. Of course, there is currently another condition that restricts it, and that is price. The cost of this steam turbine is not cheap at all. It is almost twice as expensive as a 3-expansion reciprocating steam power engine. This price is destined to make it impossible for the Navy to complete all the replacements. After all, the Navy has limited money and can only spend it wisely. Of course, the king cannot just watch the operation of the steam turbine equipped on the Lombardy all the time. It would be too boring. However, if you want to divert the king's attention so that it is not so boring, at least other battleships need to bear part of it. But the tall and majestic main battleship is currently sold out. Should the king be invited to visit the Galileo-class battleship that has been in service for almost 20 years, don't make trouble. Take the king to see the forward-loading gun battleship from 20 years ago, the largest caliber 460mm main gun in history. I'm afraid he has lost his mind to do this. But then Admiral Yagel thought of a gadget. Your Majesty, our Navy has developed a new warship that can submerge into the water. I wonder if your Majesty is interested in taking a look. I'm very interested. Take me to see it. How could Carlo not be interested in what the Minister of the Navy said? He actually only paid attention to the large battleship on the water, and even forgot about the assassin in the water. Submarines are powerful weapons. Although they are not that useful in the Mediterranean, you must know that Italy currently has overseas colonies, and they are very suitable for the use of assassins in the sea. The group then returned to the Taranto military port. Under the leadership of Admiral Yaggi, they came to a small military dock. A ship with submarine characteristics appeared in front of everyone. Compared with the warships next to it, this submarine is very small. Its length above the water is no more than 20 meters and its width is about 3 meters. Sure enough, I heard Admiral Agil's introduction. Your Majesty, this submersible ship was designed and built under the supervision of naval engineer Captain Ezeal Lord. Only the designer knows the specific situation. Captain Lord, please introduce this new warship. When Admiral Yaji said the word battleship, his eyes clearly drifted towards the row of battleships standing on rails in the military port. It was obvious that he had a hard conscience about referring to the humble-looking boat in front of him as a battleship. Fortunately, Captain Rhodes came to his rescue. Your Majesty, Your Excellency, General. Looking at the trembling Captain Rhodes standing in front of him, Carlo said with a smile, Captain, please introduce your work. Your Majesty, Admiral, this explorer submarine was built after I applied to the Navy. It has a total length of 18.79 meters and a total width of 6.78 meters. It weighs 84.86 tons above water and 94.83 tons below water. It is equipped with a 60 horsepower diesel engine. The engine and the electric motor powered by the battery can guarantee the boat's speed of 10 knots on the water and 6 knots underwater. However, due to power problems, it can only stay underwater for a maximum of 2 hours. In addition, the submarine is on the boat. Torpedo launch tubes were installed for the first time, capable of launching 433mm blackhead torpedoes. From Captain Lord's narration, Carlo later learned about his ideas for building the submarine. Because he also got inspiration from others, he was full of interest after seeing photos of submarines designed by American John Holland, so he started designing submarines after hearing what Captain Rhodes said. Carlo said to Admiral Yaji behind him, Admiral, the Navy Department needs to pay attention to this type of ship called a submarine. The main research and development idea is to prioritize reliability, followed by range, firepower, etc. Torpedoes are a good weapon for such a concealed ship, very suitable. Now that the king has spoken, how could Admiral Yaji be ignorant? Besides, this thing doesn't cost much at first glance, so you might gain a lot from researching it. So Admiral Yaji agreed. Okay, Your Majesty, we will allocate a fund to conduct research on this submarine. Admiral Yaji, I think Mr. John Holland can try to invite him to see if he is willing to come to Italy to study submarines. Okay, Your Majesty, I will send someone to invite you. Forget it, I'll let the people from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs do it better. It's not good for you to send people to the United States, considering that many officers and soldiers of the Navy fought against their American counterparts last year. It would be better for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to take action and not attract so much attention. Chapter 441 The Russians' intention to purchase ships. The early morning sunlight shines through the bright windows into the room, which is obviously so harmonious. Carlo was immersed in work in the room. There were many documents on the table that he needed to process, all of which needed to be signed. Just as Carlo was immersed in his work, he heard the voice of the attendant coming from outside the door. Your Majesty, Foreign Minister Bacona has something to ask for. Invite him in. Upon hearing that the Foreign Secretary had arrived, Carlo immediately invited him in. Your Majesty, there is news from Russia. The Russian government asks if our country is willing to sell Genoa-class battleships. The Russians want to buy our warships. Carlo was surprised when he heard what the Foreign Secretary said. Because the relationship between Italy and Russia is not good. On the one hand, the two countries have somewhat conflicting interests in the Balkans. Although it is not as intense as with Austria-Hungary, it will still be affected to some extent. On the other hand, Russia is an ally of France. Do I need to introduce the relationship between France and Italy? I didn't expect that the Russians would actually look to Italy to buy ships. Yes, Your Majesty. Knowing that the king had doubts, Bacona immediately clarified his doubts. Fortunately, before returning, he asked the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to investigate the reasons for the Russians' purchase of ships. In Bacona's narration, Carlo finally understood why Russia needed to purchase warships from abroad. In March 1898, Russia captured the port of Port Arthur and extended the Siberian railway terminal that had already begun construction from Chennai to Port Arthur. This aroused dissatisfaction from Japan, which also peaked into the northeast region. In order to counter Russia's attack on the northeast, Japan formulated a radical shipbuilding plan, aiming to complete the plan of 6 new battleships by 1905. 6 battleships are enough to give Japan an overwhelming advantage in the Far East waters, and become the overlord of the Far East Point. On the other hand, after Russia occupied Port Arthur, it suddenly discovered that, although it occupied Port Arthur, its fleet had more tasks to perform, and it also faced threats from the Japanese point at this time. The strength of the Russian Pacific Fleet was not strong at this time. Its largest and most modern warships were the armored cruisers Nasimov, Rurik, and Russia. In addition, it also included the protected cruiser Admiral Vladimir, Dmitry Donsky and Parmitsova, etc. Just look at the warship configuration of the Russian Far East Fleet, and you will find that the mission of its Far East Fleet is mainly to break up the war, and the target is naturally the British trade line and the Far East Point. However, after acquiring the ice-free port of Port Arthur in the Far East, the goals of the Russian Far East Fleet have changed, and they need to compete with Japan for sea control in the Far East. In order to cope with the rapid development of the Japanese Navy, Russia first transferred the Petlovit and Libya, which were built in 1895, to the Far East. However, the 2 ships were second-class battleships that could cruise in the vast Pacific for a long time. The firepower is not that strong. Therefore, in order to deal with future threats in the Far East, the Russian Navy needs to build 4 new battleships. Therefore, under repeated representations by the Navy, on March 22, 1898, the Tsar agreed to build 2 more battleships, in addition to a shipbuilding plan, to build 16 cruisers and 30 destroyers for the Far East Fleet point. But planning is one thing, building is another. Russia's Baltic coast shipyards are already filled with battleships and cruisers under construction. Russian shipyards in the Baltic Sea, specifically the shipyards around St. Petersburg, could only start construction on up to 5 large ships at the same time. The ships designed by Russia still take a long time to build, while the warships built by Japan in the UK can be completed in a relatively short time. If we wait for the Baltic shipyards to build it themselves, we will definitely not be able to meet the shipbuilding target on time. In addition, the low efficiency of Russian shipyards is also one of the reasons that slows down the speed of its shipbuilding. The only way to solve this bottleneck at this time is to seek available resources from abroad to build battleships so which shipyard meets Russia's needs. First of all, the UK can rule it out first. Given the current relationship between Britain and Russia, this ship was built in the UK. Maybe the Japanese are more familiar with it than they are. Although France is a good ally, the price of Frenchman-made ships is relatively high, and the French Navy cannot build its own warships. Because the 10 years of delay for the Green Water Navy has required the French Navy to make up a lot of lessons, so France is not suitable. Austria-Hungary, forget it. Next one. Germany, this was not a good choice, because due to the Navy Act, the German shipyards were also filled with their own warships. In addition, who is the target of the Franco-Russian alliance also makes Russia unwilling to let Germany build ships for itself. Next, only the United States and Italy are left. The Spanish-American War that just ended gave Russia a deep understanding of the performance of the warships of both parties in the Spanish-American War, so Italy was the only choice left. One more thing, at this time, the owner of the Philadelphia shipyard, Crump, was very interested in the vacancy of Russian battleships. He lobbied the Russian government to give him the battleship order and was active in this regard. Thanks to his lobbying, the Russian government had already negotiated with him, but once the Battle of Santiago started, there was no further progress, and delaying asking the Italian government until now also shows that the Russian government is procrastinating enough. Just 1. Facing Carlo's question, but Kona nodded. The Russians want us to build them a battleship. Yes, even if there is a lack of battleships at this time, Russia is extremely cautious in its foreign purchases. The order for this battleship is probably too small. Carlo looked at the foreign minister and said, how about we ask the Russians to buy 1 more ship and we can sell the blueprints. That's right. Carlo worked hard for this order from the Russians, and even took out the drawings of the Genoa class. However, Carlo's words stunned the foreign secretary, and it took him a long time to speak. Your Majesty, this needs to be carefully considered. The Navy may have objections. Carlo knew what Bacona meant, because the sale of Genoa-class blueprints and technology to Russia was very likely to be known to France, or it would definitely be known to France. At this time, the Italian Navy will inevitably be dissatisfied with this, but Carlo disagreed. Because this battleship technology will not become obsolete if it is retained, and in his opinion, the Genoa class is completely a transitional battleship. After the successful development of the steam turbine, 2 of the 3 major parts of the dreadnought have been completed. He only needs to wait for the 305mm rapid fire. If the naval gun is successfully developed, everything will fall into place. Therefore, we look at the problem from different angles and draw different conclusions. Besides, doesn't the Italian Navy develop new battleships? Bacona, I understand your worries, but don't worry about this matter. Since we have sold American drawings and technology, what can Russia not sell? Since the king has said this, what else can he, the foreign minister, say? Okay, your majesty, I will send a telegram to the ambassador in Russia and ask him to inquire about the attitude of the Russians. After the departure of the foreign secretary, Carlo was now in no mood to continue working, contemplating the implications of the sale to Russian battleships. First of all, as a direct beneficiary, the Russians will definitely welcome it. As for other countries, Japan and the United Kingdom must be dissatisfied, but this is of no use. Everyone knows Italy's attitude towards the sale of warships. If you give them money, they will sell them. If you give them enough money, you can buy new warships that they have not yet used. Enjoy it first, sir. As for the Allies Germany and Austria, Germany is busy building warships and may be dissatisfied, but it will not affect the relationship between the 2 countries. As for Austria-Hungary, it is even less likely, because its navy is too weak. After much deliberation, Carlo believed that selling warships and even blueprint technology to Russia would not affect the future situation. If it is selling a dreadnought, then Carlo may need to think carefully about it, but for the former dreadnought, there is no need to think about it at all. Just sell it for the money. If you have a good attitude, others may buy more. Following Carlo's statement, the radio wave soon arrived in St. Petersburg, the capital of Russia. Next, it depends on the attitude of the Russians. Chapter 442 Ship Purchase Negotiation. Inside the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in St. Petersburg, a negotiation had just concluded. Ambassador Gorek, although your 2 countries have some differences, I think mutual understanding is the most important outcome of this meeting. I look forward to the next meeting with the ambassador and hope that we can eliminate the differences between the 2 parties by then. Russian Foreign Minister Ramsdorf stood up, shook the hand of Italian Ambassador Garlock, and said the above words. Your Excellency Ramsdorf, I hope that the next meeting can reduce the differences between our 2 parties. See you soon, Ambassador. Gorek replied and left. After the Italian ambassador left, Ramsdorf immediately called for his servant. Prepare the carriage, I'm going to the palace. Negotiating with Italy to purchase warships is also very important to Russia, so it needs to inform Tsar Nicholas II of the specific situation. When Ramsdorf arrived at the palace, he discovered that not only the Tsar was waiting for him, but also Navy Minister Tertov, Finance Minister Vishnegradsky, and Chairman of the Council of Ministers Pobedonostsev. Everything is here. How was Ramsdorf's talk with the Italians? Pobedonostsev, the chairman of the Council of Ministers, asked the foreign minister who came in. Pobedonostsev, who was a teacher of Nicholas II, was trusted by the Tsar so much that he became the head of the civil service and served as the chairman of the Council of Ministers. In the years after Nicholas II came to the throne, Pobedonostsev adopted a high-pressure policy internally and replaced a large number of officials with enlightened ideas to ensure the stability of the ruling class. But his move also aroused the hostility of the bourgeoisie, and many people wanted to get rid of him quickly. It's not that good. The Italians insist that if we only buy 1 battleship, we must pay 10.5 million rubles. The price of 2 battleships has been reduced to 19.5 million rubles, and the price for selling battleship blueprints and technology has also been reduced to 450,000 rubles. 1 ruble for 2.8 lire. After hearing the words of the foreign minister, Tsar Nicholas II spoke. You mean that Italy is unwilling to sell 1 battleship alone? but insists on selling 2 battleships together. Yes, Your Majesty, Italy has reduced the package price of 2 Genoa-class battleships and blueprints and technology from 26 million rubles to 2 million rubles, but the price of a single ship has not been reduced, and the price is 10.5 million rubles. Upon hearing what the foreign minister said, Nicholas II looked at Admiral Tertov, Minister of the Navy. It was obvious that he wanted to hear the Navy's opinion. Your Majesty, if we are talking about the purchase of a single ship, then the price offered by the Italians is on the high side, but if it is at a ship purchase, then this price is reasonable. As for the blueprints and technology, I think this will be of great benefit to the Navy and shipyards. They are all very helpful. As we all know, Italy's performance has been very good in recent years. Although its cost is relatively high among other countries, it is very cost effective. Therefore, our Navy believes that we can continue to negotiate with the Italians. General Tertov's words gave Nicholas II some ideas. But just when he was about to speak, Finance Minister Vishnogradski suddenly spoke to stop him. Your Majesty, the Ministry of Finance has no objection to the purchase of Italian battleships, but the price of 2 battleships plus technical drawings is as high as 24 million rubles, which is too high. Our Ministry of Finance has only prepared 20 million rubles for the 2 battleships, which rises to 24 million. What should we do with the extra gap? The finance minister's words made the atmosphere anxious, because everyone knew that this was causing trouble. When General Tertov saw the young Tsar who was hesitating again, he secretly said something bad and hurriedly explained. Your Majesty, this purchase of battleships is very important to the safety of the Far East. The relationship between our country and Japan is now very tense. This unreasonable country already has 4 battleships in the Far East, and China currently only has 2 battleships in the Far East. It is completely at a disadvantage. Absolute disadvantage. So our country urgently needs to supplement its strength in the Far East. As for purchasing technology and blueprints, it is also important to improve our country's shipbuilding level. Both are urgently needed by His Majesty's Navy. Facing Admiral Tertov's affectionate speech, Nicholas II was a little moved. He turned around and asked the Minister of Finance, "Can't the Ministry of Finance come up with 4 million rubles?" Faced with the Tsar's words, Finance Minister Vishnogradski immediately cried out, "Your Majesty, all the money from the Ministry of Finance has a place to go. There is no spare ruble for the Navy." Faced with the complaint from Finance Minister Vishnogradski, Pobedonostsev, chairman of the Council of Ministers, spoke at this time. 4 million rubles is not too much. Can't the Ministry of Finance squeeze it out? It should be able to squeeze it out. Vishnogradski, who was a teacher of the Tsar, spoke with great weight. Firstly, the indecisive Tsar respected his opinions very much. Secondly, he was also the main supporter of the expansion of the empire in the Far East. Of course, on the other hand, he also knows all the government departments very well, and knows that the finance minister has selfish motives. Because the American businessman Crump was highly recommended by this person at the time. To say that the two had no financial dealings was to bully the young Tsar into not understanding the situation. This old fox knew everything about him. Of course, this sudden incident was probably in retaliation for the Navy's strong opposition to shipbuilding in the United States. You must know that the government had already negotiated with the American businessman at that time, and the fact that the meat in the mouth was spoiled would definitely make the finance minister dissatisfied. There is still a chance of squeezing. Of course, if Mr. Ramsdorff can continue to lower the price, that would be even better. When faced with the chairman of the Council of Ministers, who was very important and difficult to fool, Vishnogradski could only give up, unwilling to offend this important minister. Unlike the Admiralty, who has his own interests in the military, the chairman of the Council of Ministers is the head of the ministers, a position somewhat similar to that of the Prime Minister, and is not someone who can be offended. And after the Chancellor backed down, the meeting was about as good as it gets, and the great little daddy Tsar finally made his decision. In negotiations with the Italians, we can try to purchase 2 battleships. In addition, the battleship drawings and technology are also needed by our country. Of course, the specific negotiations will require your attention. Mr. Ramsdorff could only answer the Tsar's order. As you command, your majesty. After the meeting, they naturally went back point and Ramsdorff planned to go home early because he came to attend the meeting after negotiating with the Italians today point. But when he got home, he got a piece of news from the housekeeper. You said Ambassador Rivera was waiting for me. Yes, sir. Ambassador Rivera has been waiting for you at home for an hour. Ramsdorff certainly knew who Ambassador Rivera was. As the ambassador of Russia's most important ally, Ambassador Rivera was friends with many senior Russian officials, including Ramsdorff. Ambassador Rivera, I'm sorry to keep you waiting. As soon as he arrived at the living room, Ramsdorff looked at Ambassador de Rivera sitting in the hall and immediately greeted the French ambassador with a smile on his face. Your Excellency Ramsdorff, I'm sorry for interrupting you this time. As soon as he heard Ambassador Rivera's words, Ramsdorff had a guess in his heart, but he spoke enthusiastically without saying anything. It's nothing. It's not too late for me to welcome you, the ambassador. Your Excellency Ramsdorff, I came here to ask for something. Ambassador de Rivera's words made Ramsdorff wary in his heart, but he said it in his mouth. What can I do for you, Ambassador? I heard that you are talking to the Italians about the purchase of Genoa-class battleships and technical drawings. Our country wants to share your country's worries and is willing to bear half of the cost of the technical drawings. What do you think? The French ambassador went straight to the point and directly stated his intention. Ramsdorff was not surprised that Ambassador de Rivera knew that he was negotiating with the Italians. The close relationship between the two countries over the years has made many people become friends of France. When discussing the purchase of warships with Italy, Russia also, there is no hiding. It is not difficult to find out. Of course, France must have an ulterior motive for being so kind as to bear the cost of a copy of technical drawings for Russia. But although he knew it in his heart, Ramsdorff kept it secret on his face. This is great. Thank you for your selfless help. I would say that the alliance between Russia and France is the strongest friendship in the world. Yes, the friendship between our two countries is the strongest, so it should be okay for your country to share the technology and blueprints of the Genoa-class battleships purchased with our country. Well, Ambassador Rivera finally explained his purpose of coming. Yes, Ambassador Rivera was so generous this time because he came for the technology of the Genoa-class battleship. After Russia decided to purchase ships from the Italians, France had this in mind. On the one hand, Italy is France's main competitor in the Mediterranean. Understanding its opponent's latest battleships can give France a more direct understanding of this opponent. Secondly, although France has always believed that its naval technology is not bad, 10 years of green water navy has really made the French navy lag behind several major powers in warship technology and naval tactics. And through the hands of the Russians, understanding and absorbing the technology of Italian warships can save France from taking a few detours. However, although France has various plans, it needs Russia's cooperation. But in the case of the Foreign Secretary, things are a little stuck. Ambassador de Rivera, your country's approach will make it difficult for our country. Because if this news spreads, it will put our country in a very embarrassing situation, which is quite risky for our country. Faced with Ramsdorff's troubled expression, Ambassador Rivera, who had been in Russia for several years, decided on something more convincing. Your Excellency Ramsdorff, small talk is disrespectful. As he spoke, a check from the Bank of France was handed to Ramsdorff. Ambassador Rivera also has one on him, but this one is for Navy Minister Tertov. After all, this requires the cooperation of the Russian Navy Ministry. Ramsdorff immediately glanced at it. The beginning of the word 5 was followed by 5 zeros, and the currency unit was francs. Yes, it was a check for 500,000 francs, and this check immediately cured the Foreign Secretary's troubles. For the sake of the friendship between your two countries, sometimes you have to break some rules. I think this should be reasonable. Of course, it should be very worthy of recognition and praise. Let us drink to the friendship between our two countries. Yes, we should have a drink. Chapter 443. The Boer War breaks out. Negotiations on the purchase of warships between Italy and Russia are still continuing. Such a major event as the purchase of warships is difficult to conclude within 2 or 3 months. Although Russia's preparations to purchase Italian warships have attracted great attention, there is another incident that has caused a huge sensation among the people and even the governments of various countries. Just in April of this year, Sir Alfred Milner, Prime Minister of the British Cape Colony, instructed British expatriates in the Transvaal to write a letter of grievance to Queen Victoria, asking her to protect the interests of British subjects in the United Kingdom. Colonial Secretary Chamberlain promoted military treatment of the Boers. In addition, the British media also created public opinion, claiming that the Boers were destroyers of peace, and that they ignored the order of the empire and so on. In addition, he made a high-profile claim that the British Empire could annex these two countries with just one pleasant trip. The British people, incited by the media, expressed their support for the British Empire's colonial policy. The British Imperial Army even claimed that it only needed £10 million to solve the Boer troubles. It was the heroic and proficient performance of the Boers before that made the British military decide to invest a huge sum of £10 million. Otherwise $5 million would have been enough. The ultimate reason why the British Empire was so hostile to the two Boer countries was interests. In 1884, prospecting experts discovered the world's largest Witwatersrand gold mine. Its gold reserves accounted for 10% of the world's total, on a remote pasture between Pretoria and the Vaal River in the Republic of Transvaal. 40% of total gold reserves, and Johannesburg was subsequently built on this gold mine. Profits and taxes from the gold mines enabled the Transvaal Republic's economy to develop rapidly, while the Orange Republic also made a good living from the production of diamonds. The continuous discovery of mineral resources in the two Boer countries also attracted the greedy eyes of the British. Of course, the British Empire had only used force before this. In 1895, Dr. Johnson, a senior employee of the South African Mining Company, led 500 South African Company police and several machine guns in an attempt to expedition to the Transvaal and overthrow the Paul Kruger regime in the Transvaal. As a result, except for 134 people who were killed, the rest, including Johnson, were all captured. As for the riots, initiated by the Internal Alien Reform Committee, they were also suppressed by the police. Yes, this is also the origin of William II's famous telegram. Of course, after suffering a loss last time, the British Empire felt that relying on the police to do things this time was not reliable at all. If you want to capture the two Boer republics, you still need the regular army to take action. As a result, the British Empire's troops began to gather in South Africa. Of course, while preparing military measures, the British Empire also wanted to use the method of subduing the enemy without fighting to make the two Boer countries that had offended the imperial power quickly realize their mistakes and obediently obey the orders of the British Empire. Therefore, in June, Milner, the governor of the Cape Colony, and Kruger, the president of the Transvaal Republic, held a last negotiation on the issue of protecting the rights and interests of foreigners in Bloemfontein. This same President Kruger prophetically warned after the discovery of gold in the Witslanders that we should not cheer, but weep, because this would soak our land in a sea of blood. As expected, foreigners, mainly British, arrived one after another, and friction with the Boers intensified. Later, in order to protect the interests of the citizens, he stipulated in 1890 that immigrants had to live there for at least 14 years before they could obtain citizenship. This caused opposition from the British people in Johannesburg. Of course, this also deepened the conflict with Britain, which eventually led to the outbreak of two Boer wars. This negotiation did not go well, because the two parties could not agree on the core issue at all. The Boers were unwilling to recognize the British Empire's request for suzerainty, even if it meant changing the residence period for foreigners to obtain Transvaal citizenship from 14 years reduced to 5 years. In response to the Boers' disrespectful behavior, the British Empire stepped up its efforts to transport troops to South Africa and deployed these troops on the border between the two countries. Obviously, since the British Empire was not good at writing, they could only learn martial arts. The aggressive attitude of the British Empire made both Boer countries aware of the ominous situation. In response to the British threat, the two Boer states came together in order to avoid being strategically passive and disrupt the British deployment. The two Boer countries decided to strike preemptively and could not wait for the British Army to complete its deployment. Therefore, on October 9, 1899, the Transvaal government issued an ultimatum to the United Kingdom, requiring the United Kingdom to stop sending more troops to South Africa, withdraw all troops that arrived in South Africa after June 1st, and submit all disputes to diplomatic arbitration 48 hours. To reply point, the tiny Transvaal government dared to threaten the British Empire, and Chamberlain, the colonial secretary, directly ordered Milner to reject South Africa's conditions. So 2 days later, on the afternoon of October 11, 1899, the Federal Parliament of the Transvaal Republic and the Orange Free State Republic declared war on Britain, and the Second Boer War broke out. Point regarding the Boer War. All countries were very sympathetic to the treatment of the Boers, and the movement to support the Boer Republic continued. The Netherlands and Belgium formed numerous civil society groups, solicited donations, published articles, established foundations, and donated wartime mobile hospitals and medical equipment to the Transvaal. Thousands of volunteers from the Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, France, the United States, Russia, Ireland, Italy and Scandinavian countries crossed the ocean and came to the Transvaal, preparing to fight alongside the Boers, of course. These are spontaneous civil movements. As for the governments of various countries, they are not optimistic about the two small Boer republics. Even the most optimistic military strategists believe that the two Boer countries can block the attack of the British Empire for up to half a year. Of course, this is also the view of Marshal Cadorna and General Simeon. Your Majesty, the Boer War has broken out. Although the Boers may have taken advantage of the incomplete deployment of the British Empire, more than 10,000 British troops have been deployed at key points around the two countries. If the Boers just capture the key points, they will surely defeat them. A lot of manpower was lost. As far as I know, the two Boer countries only have a population of 800,000. With this population, it is impossible to support the Boers in 2 or 3 major battles, and then it will be difficult. Marshal Cadorna said it as tactfully as possible, because according to his estimation, the Boers could basically resist for 3 months. When the British Empire troops were assembled, the stage would belong to the British troops. Don't blame Marshal Cadorna for thinking this way. If he hadn't been familiar with this war that brought the British to Waterloo, even he wouldn't have believed that the British Empire would suffer such heavy losses for the sake of these two Boer countries. This shows how majestic the British Empire must have been before the Boer War. Challenging the status of the British Empire at this time was simply an impossible task. Of course, after the Boer War, this became a difficult task. Chapter 444 Russia-Italy Ship Purchase Agreement. The subsequent development of the Boer War exceeded all countries' expectations. The combat performance of the Boer army surprised all countries, and of course what was even more surprising was the performance of the British Army. On October 12, the day after the declaration of war, the Boer coalition consisting of the Transvaal Army and the Orange Armed Forces moved eastward. General Piet Joubert, Commander-in-Chief of the Cloth Army, led the main force from East Orange over the Drakensberg Mountains, entered the Natal colony, and went straight to Ladysmith, where the main force of the British Army in Natal was located. In the early morning of October 20th, the advancing Cloth Army fought on Mount Tirana with a brigade of British troops stationed here to defend the outer defense line of Ladysmith. The commander of the Cloth Army, General Mee, took advantage of the favorable terrain and the cover of morning fog to launch a surprise attack on the British Army. The British Army lost 544 people and the Cloth Army lost 126 people. Another armed forces, commanded by General Della, known as the Lion of the Western Transvaal, entered the territory of British Bechuanaland on October 11th and cut off the Western Cape Railway line, thereby blocking the opening of the border links between Prussia and Rhodesia. De Leray divided his troops into 2 groups, one commanded by General Cronje, which surrounded Mafeking, and the other, mainly Orange, commanded by Louis Botha, which surrounded the diamond town of Kimberley. The 3rd Boer Army crossed the Orange River and went south, absorbing a small group of Boer armed forces in the British Cape Colony, operating in the northeastern region of the Cape, and threatening the east-west Cape Railway line. The British Army had to tightly defend the Orange River Railway Bridge to guard against the Boers' attempts to blow up the bridge. DAAR, the most important railway junction and military supplies distribution center on the Western Cape Railway line, was also harassed by the Boers. In order to protect the normal passage of the East-West Cape Railway, the British had to install a 4.7-inch naval gun on the train, slowly advance undercover, and repair the railway in small sections. On October 30, 1899, Ladysmith's 4,000 British troops, under the command of Lieutenant General George White, launched a counter-attack against the Clothier Army, and encountered the main force of the Clothier Army under the command of Jubbert in Nicholson Canyon. The British Army was defeated, and lost 1,372 men. The remaining troops retreated to Ladysmith, and were immediately surrounded. Due to Ladysmith's tight defense, Jubbert was unable to attack the city several times, so he sent a reconnaissance force deep into the British hinterland, as far as the Escort Line, to scout for locations that could be used to fortify. The rest of the main force camped and rested around Ladysmith, waiting for the arrival of the British Overseas Corps at the end of October. 20,000 British troops led by General Redvers Buller, Commander-in-Chief of the British Reinforcement, South African Expeditionary Force, and who had suppressed the local uprising in Ireland, finally arrived in Cape Town. Beginning in mid-November, the British Army commanded by Buller launched a counter-attack against the Cloth Army on three fronts: Eastern, Central and Western. Lieutenant General Methuen lifted the siege of Kimberley on the Western Front. Lieutenant General French attacked the Orange Free State on the Central Line, and General Buller led the main force to relieve the siege of Ladysmith on the Eastern Front. In the early morning of December 15, General Buller launched an attack on the Cloth Army at Colenso, a small station southwest of Ladysmith, in an attempt to forcefully cross the Tugela River to Ladysmith. The forces under Buller's command included the British 2nd, 4th, 5th, and 6th Brigades, totaling 16,000 men, as well as 4 regiments of light cavalry and 3 squadrons of lancers composed of colonial cavalry. The artillery has 5 artillery batteries and 30 cannons, in addition to 16 naval 12-pounders and 4.7-inch guns, including cavalry and artillery. Buller's total strength was 22,000 men. The Boer troops who participated in the Battle of Colenso included militia groups from 8 regions including Johannesburg, Heidelberg, Krugersdorp, Vryheid, and Utrecht, troops from the Orange Free State, and Johannesburg and Swaziland's White Police Force, totaling 3,500 people. In addition, there is a 120mm German Krupp howitzer, a 75mm Krupp field gun, 2 75mm French Schneider Creusot cannon, a 37mm Maxim rapid fire gun, 24 Markskin machine gun. Due to the fact that the Berg troops had concealed their artillery positions first, and the British commander's command errors led to the dispersion of troops and rigid tactics, the British Army suffered a disastrous defeat in this battle, with 2,335 killed, 471 missing, and 15 cannons lost. The Boer Army suffered only 12 killed and 30 wounded. During the same period as the Battle of Ladysmith, the British Army also suffered defeats at Kimberley on the Western Front and Stormberg on the Central Line, losing more than 3,500 men. In just 1 week, the British Army lost more than 6,300 men, while the Boer Army's losses were simply negligible. The British Empire suffered such heavy losses. In addition to its own poor command, the gap in weapons and equipment was also not small. For example, in terms of artillery, although the Boers have fewer artillery, they purchase the latest artillery from various countries. Another factor is that the Boers purchased a lot of machine guns compared with the original time and space. The reputation of machine guns has become even louder, because Italy has used a large number of machine guns in several foreign wars. Various countries have purchased a lot of weapons that can continuously provide fire suppression. As for the 2 Boer countries, they purchased a lot of machine guns. According to statistics from the Maxim heavy machine gun manufacturer Beretta Arms Company, the 2 Boer countries purchased a total of 83 heavy machine guns. Of course, this is just a statistic on the surface, and it is not clear in reality. Therefore, compared with the casualties in history, the British Empire suffered greater losses this time. Such a poor performance by the British Army caused an uproar in all countries. As for the British side, the incompetent General Buller was even blamed for resigning from his position as Commander-in-Chief of the British Expeditionary Force. Due to the defeat, the British people were even more passionate. They could not accept that the world's most powerful country was defeated by two small bore countries. Prime Minister Salisbury also shouted the slogan "Carry the war to the end." In this case, Prime Minister Salisbury first appointed Roberts as Commander-in-Chief of the South African Expeditionary Force. At the same time, troops were also mobilized from all over the world in an attempt to further increase the number of troops, expand the scale of the war, and crush the small bores with absolute superiority. As the British Empire mobilized its troops, arduous negotiations were finally concluded in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in St. Petersburg. Ambassador Gorek, you are an excellent diplomat. Congratulations to our two countries for finally reaching a consensus. Foreign Minister Ramsdorf, who was the Russian negotiator, sighed after shaking hands with the Italian ambassador. Congratulations to our two countries for reaching a consensus. Ambassador Garlic responded in the same way. He was also very tired from the negotiations in the past 2 months, but at least the negotiations were finally concluded. Yes, the contract to purchase battleships has finally come to an end. After 2 months of negotiations and wrangling, Italy and Russia have also reached a consensus on the purchase of battleships. Italy sells 2 Genoa-class battleships under construction to Russia. In addition, Italy will also deliver a full set of construction drawings for the Genoa-class battleships, and it also needs to provide technology to Russia. For this purpose, the Russian government needs to pay 23.5 million rubles to the Italian side. Among them, the price of 2 Genoa-class battleships is 18 million rubles, and the price of the complete set of drawings and technology is 5.5 million rubles. This is all the fault of the French, which delayed the negotiation for a while. This ship purchase contract is very satisfactory to Russia. On the one hand, I'm very satisfied with the performance of the purchased battleship, and on the other hand, the delivery time is also good. Because these 2 battleships are directly appropriated from the Italian Navy, the delivery time will be very fast. After the contract is signed, the Russian Navy needs to send people to Venice to prepare to familiarize themselves with the warships. Of course, Japan will be dissatisfied with this ship purchase contract. But Japan cannot influence Italy's decision, and can only endure it silently. As for the British Empire behind Japan, this Boer war has been disgraced enough. The key is to deal with the cunning Boers first, and nothing else can be taken care of. Chapter 445 New Century. Amid the din of the Boer War, the 19th century was coming to an end. The media in various countries are enthusiastic about the cross-century, and have expressed their expectations for the arrival of the new century. At this time, many newspapers also published their prospects for the new century, among which the Times published the most interesting ones. Because he is looking forward to the life that human beings should have at the end of the next century, people in the future will definitely live in high-rise buildings and go out every day to work or play in their own aircraft. In addition, if you don't want to fly your own aircraft, you can also use public aircraft, which use unmanned aircraft, to fly fixedly to several locations. In addition, unmanned tillage machines will also be used in farmland, which only require workers to watch. In life, a variety of automatic instruments will help people live a better life. For example, automatic vegetable cooking machines will what to eat at night. Bring the necessary vegetables, meat and condiments. It only takes 10 minutes, and the fragrant food will be delivered directly to you. The same is true for haircuts. The barber profession will be more responsible for watching the machine to prevent it from malfunctioning. The Times' vision of a better life for mankind 100 years from now also ignites people who are about to enter the new century to look forward to the future. Of course, the outlook for the future is definitely good, and the same is true for Italy. However, for the Italian government, the summary statistics of 1899, the last year of the late 19th century, are equally important. According to Italian official statistics, at the end of 1899, the total population of Italy reached 36.47 million. Please note that this statistics is based on adding 3.57 million people in Libya and Albania. Because the two places are rich in mineral resources, and the local replacement policy has long been implemented, it is only a matter of time before they are regarded as local, and this census can be regarded as a precursor. The government is already considering changing the two-region governorship system to a regional system. However, because there were many things to consider, Progress had been slow before, but now it is almost time to change to the local area point. In addition to demographics, the Italian government's fiscal revenue this year has also hit new highs. This year, Italy's total fiscal revenue reached 1.947 billion lire, the highest in history. Italy has completely overcome the impact of the drought. You must know that in 1897, Italy's fiscal revenue was only 1.752 billion lire. It was 5.3% lower than in 1896. After 2 years of recovery, Italy's finances are finally back on track. Point of the total revenue of 1.947 billion lire, 427 million lire comes from tariffs, which are also the largest tax category in Italy. The second largest category of fiscal revenue is still salt and tobacco monopoly taxes, which amounted to 341 million lire, followed by consumption tax, property tax, business tax, land-related tax and securities transaction stamp tax, etc. Italy has set a new high in taxation, but if you compare its expenditures, you will find that it still cannot keep up with the pace of expenditures. In 1899, Italian fiscal expenditures reached 2.013 billion lire. National defense, public security, education and health, science and technology, transportation, social security, debt interest payments, etc. all consume this money. Among them, defense expenditure was the largest category of expenditure. The Navy and Army spent a total of 387 million lire in 1899. In addition to military expenditures, education expenditures accounted for the second largest category of expenditures, with 319 million lire paid for education in 1899, followed by transportation, social security, debt interest payments, public safety, etc. Of course, the Italian government's expenditures are so huge, naturally because of Italy's rapid development. This year, Italy's total steel production reached 4.18 million tons, setting a record high. The rapid growth of steel in Italy is partly driven by urban construction in Italy. Everyone knows that real estate has promoted various industries. Driven by Italy's previous economic development, many people have achieved financial freedom. Now that they have money, some people want to have a safe home, and some people are targeting this market. So real estate is also booming against this background. As soon as real estate boomed, it immediately showed its power. The construction materials industry such as steel bars, cement, glass, and bricks and tiles immediately became prosperous. Engineering machinery, furniture, and even banks were fully developed. No wonder real estate will become a pillar industry in later generations. However, there are still some difficulties in becoming a pillar industry in Italy. That's how to mobilize everyone's enthusiasm for buying a house. Of course, Italian real estate is still in its infancy and is not yet very mature. At present, Italy's strongest strengths in the world are its shipbuilding and textile industries. Yes, Italy still needs the textile industry to absorb its huge unemployed population. As for shipyards, they are also labor-intensive technical industries that require a lot of manpower. Italy's dominance in Europe relies on lower construction costs than others. Where the cost comes from, naturally wages account for a large part. Of course, in addition to the current industry, the petrochemical industry is growing rapidly in Italy. In view of the increasing scale of oil discoveries in Libya, Italian oil companies have received direct capital injections from the Ministry of Finance to develop Italy's petrochemical industry. In addition to the Naples refinery, Italian oil companies are already considering whether to build a refinery in the North. If the discovery of oil in Libya is a gift from God, it can be considered a reward for a source poor Italy. Then the development of the automobile industry is an unexpected gain for Italy. Fiat has become famous all over the world with its cheap Model A cars. Last year, Fiat sold more than 40,000 Model A cars. 30,000 of them were sold abroad, and more than 8,000 were sold in the United States as far away as North America. Last year, Fiat produced 95% of the world's cars and sold 95% of the cars nowadays. No one who manufactures cars in the world knows the name Fiat. Of course, Fiat is so famous in the world because countries are still in the workshop production stage and were caught off guard by the sudden large-scale industrialized automobile industry. Of course, How can all countries let Italy have exclusive access to the automobile market? Capitalists in various countries have taken a fancy to the automobile industry, so they are secretly planning in their own countries to develop their own country's automobile industries, of course. For Fiat's top executives, represented by Giovanni Agnelli, the thought of being prepared for danger in times of peace has always existed. Ever since the Model A became popular, Giovanni Agnelli said that Fiat's Model A was able to sell well, only because it had taken the lead before other competitors were aware of it. No one knows when this advantage will end, so everyone needs to work hard to let Fiat accumulate more technology and be ready to update models at any time. Of course, the Fiat matter can come to an end. Italy's industrial development also needs to be improved in the new century. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 446 Zeppelin. The sun is shining brightly, and the warm breeze is light. The streets of Unter den Linden are bustling with traffic, and there are many commercial ports. One after another, magnificent and towering buildings rise from the ground, towering into the sky in clouds, reflecting the colorful light under the morning glow. The nameplate of the Airship Propulsion Association hangs in midair, and is very eye-catching in Unter den Linden, where advertising posters are overwhelming. It didn't take McClung long to see where it was. The elevator went straight up, and the iron door opened and closed. When he stepped out of the elevator, he looked around, and saw that the long office corridor was filled with offices of all sizes. After a few minutes, McClung finally found a purple door with the word Zeppelin written on it. McClung adjusted his breathing, raised his hand, and knocked lightly on the door a few times. When he heard a syllable saying, "Please come in," from inside, he pushed the door open with force. Sofa, coffee table, side chair and square table. Two bronze incense burners exude a light fragrance in the corner. Together with the simple furniture decoration, they add a sense of natural elegance to the entire office. On the chair behind the square table, a typical German old man with a mustache and a hooked nose was writing something on the table. When he saw McClung standing at the door, there was obvious shock and daze on his grey-yellow face. It seemed that he didn't expect that someone who was not a waiter would appear in front of him. He put down the carved feather quill in his hand and asked politely, "I'm Ferdinand von Zeppelin. Who are you looking for, sir?" Zeppelin's voice was concise and rich, without the slightest hint of weakness or trembling in the voice of an ordinary old man. Even though he is nearly 70 years old, he is still rosy-cheeked and full of energy. When Zeppelin announced his home address, McClung finally broke into a happy smile and said, "Mr. Zeppelin, the purpose of my visit this time is to admire your research on airships. Oh, by the way, I almost forgot. Introducing myself, my name is Ethel Macron, an Italian, and I have long been famous for your deeds with Zeppelin." In 1838, Zeppelin was born into an aristocratic family in the Grand Duchy of Baden. His father was the director of the inner court of the Grand Duchy of Baden, and was an out-and-out powerful tycoon. Zeppelin had a strong interest in engineering machinery since he was a child. This instinctive impulse to work was directly related to his subsequent brilliant achievements. Beginning in 1887, retired Zeppelin officially devoted himself to the improvement of airship technology. As an important carrier for realizing mankind's aviation dream, the airship was born more than 100 years ago. However, the airships put into use at that time were all soft airships. These airships used hydrogen-filled airbags as suspension devices to carry pods to take off. The disadvantage was that their load capacity was small, and it was difficult to meet diverse needs. In order to improve the comprehensive performance of the airship as a whole and open up a broader space for the development of the airship industry, Zeppelin decided to open up a new waypoint. Based on the existing research results at that time, he creatively proposed a rigid airship design plan. Specifically, a boat frame is made of aluminum, and then multiple cabins are isolated in the boat frame, and corresponding airbags are placed in each cabin. After everything is ready, the hull skin is covered on the outside of the hull, and the suspension device of the rigid airship is created. Although the idea is good, there are many difficulties in actual operation. Due to weight, lift, and structure, Zeppelin faces many reasons. Of course, there is a more important reason, and that is the issue of funding. Compared with petite aircraft, the development of airships requires much higher funds. Not to mention that Zeppelin developed a rigid airship. Take the first rigid airship he developed, LZ-1, for example. There were 17 airbags in the hull, with a total volume of 12,000 cubic meters, which was 5 to 6 times larger than the soft airships at that time. The cost of building the LZ-1 was as high as 1.8 million marks. If he hadn't found more than a dozen like-minded people, the money would have wiped out his savings. Speaking of which, the reason for this came from Italy. 2 Italians, Duilio and Sigel, carried out the first mechanical flight of mankind in the spring of 1897, which made more people's enthusiasm for flying fly on the aircraft. Of course, this has resulted in fewer people willing to invest in research on aircraft such as airships, which are slow and difficult to operate. After hearing that someone traveled thousands of miles to visit him for the airship, Zeppelin also became interested. I don't know if Mr. McClung has any opinions on airships. We can discuss it. I can't say my opinion, but I think the future development prospects of airships are very good. At present, airships have great potential in terms of load capacity and seaworthiness, which can make airships an excellent aircraft for air transportation. For example, airships can carry 30 or 50 people, start from Berlin, and fly all the way to London, which may only take 1 day. McClung's remarks about airships convinced Zeppelin that he was indeed someone who had researched airships. However, the visitor immediately changed the subject and continued. However, I think there are several problems that need to be solved in airships. The first is a danger. Airships currently use hydrogen as the gas in the airbag. Hydrogen is too dangerous. It only takes a little spark to turn an expensive airship into a it's nothing. It's not conducive to the promotion of airships at all. McClung made Zeppelin frown because the problem was difficult to solve. Currently, airship researchers in various countries use hydrogen. Everyone knows the dangers of hydrogen, but hydrogen is cheap. Yes, these airship researchers have limited funds, so what can they do without hydrogen? I agree with your words, but filling with hydrogen is currently a last resort. You must know that aluminum is not cheap. If non-dangerous expensive gases are used, then the construction of this airship will be amazing, and few people can withstand its cost. Yes, for Zeppelin, doesn't he know the dangers of hydrogen? But there is only so much money, so let's ensure the success of research and development first. When faced with Zeppelin's words, McClung immediately replied, Mr. Zeppelin, actually I just came here to help you, but I hope that helium will be used in the research of airships. Helium, of course Zeppelin didn't know about this gas, but McClung introduced it immediately. Helium is a colorless and odorless inert gas with inactive chemical properties. It is difficult to react with other substances under normal conditions. Moreover, helium was discovered very late. It was not until 1895 that the British chemist Sir William Ramsay discovered that there was helium on the Earth in a radioactive vein rich in uranium. Last year, the Italian oil company discovered a large amount of helium in Libyan natural gas fields. Of course, the more important thing is that helium is very light. Only 0.178 is heavier than 0.089 kg/m hydrogen. But in terms of security, the two are not the same point. After listening to McClung's story, Zeppelin fell into deep thought. I wonder how much funding you are willing to provide. Facing Zeppelin's inquiry, McClung immediately pointed out 5 fingers. 5 million marks, but helium must be used. Make a deal. After the two briefly shook hands, Zeppelin spoke immediately. Mr. McClung, I wonder where you are employed. As an experienced person, Zeppelin could tell at a glance that the McClung in front of him did not look like a person who could take charge. However, since he dared to give 500 marks, he must be relying on someone, so he needed to ask. Facing Zeppelin's inquiry, McClung smiled and showed his white teeth. I currently work for the Royal Savoy Investment Fund. Chapter 447 News from the Far East. Carlo certainly has his own plans for investing in airships. To be fair, in the first decade of the 20th century, people were more optimistic about the role of airships. Because of their load carrying capabilities and navigability, airships had unrivaled advantages over early aircraft in both military and civilian fields of course. For Carlo, there are many benefits to showing Zeppelin to the whole world earlier. Airships can be used as transportation tools. Although they are expensive to build, they allow countries to research them. After all, the airship is a behemoth in the sky, and anyone who sees it will feel tremendous pressure pointed at his research on airships is actually very convenient. Point first of all, in terms of power, the Milan Power Laboratory in Italy can be said to be the best internal combustion engine research institution in the world. After more than 10 years of continuous investment in the field of internal combustion engines, it can be said that the Milan laboratory is a leader, and the power problem of the Zeppelin airship has been solved. In addition, in terms of helium collection, relying on the advantages of Libyan oil and natural gas, collecting helium should not be too simple for Italy. Of course, the price cannot be as cheap as hydrogen. And when Italy has more than a dozen airships, it will use them every day. In addition, it can also develop an airship that can conduct intercontinental navigation. I don't believe that other countries will not make the trip. As long as other countries compete with me to develop airships, the high cost of airships will be enough to make them realize what a pain it is. Of course, this is just one of Carlo's plans, which requires the cooperation of Zeppelin, an outstanding talent. But I believe the problem is not big. Who can refuse that his invention has caused a sensation in the world, and no one would want to gain both fame and fortune. Of course, the airship issue is not urgent. It requires continued efforts from Mr. Zeppelin. For Carlo now, there are other situations to worry about, such as protests from the British Empire. They protested against Italy's sale of Maxim heavy machine guns to the Boers. Yes, after being equipped with a large number of heavy machine guns, the Boers' attacks on the British Empire army became more deadly. Nowadays, when the Boers attack the British army, they prefer to use a small force of more than 10 people, armed with a Maxim and bullets, to ambush in front of the British army. They suddenly shoot through 2 or 3 bullet chains, mount their horses, and carry them with them. The weapon ran away, giving the British army no chance to counterattack. Moreover, the Boers were basically herders, and owned a lot of horses. They basically had 2 or 3 horses per man, and the British army could not catch up with them. The Boers' guerrilla tactics using heavy machine guns gave the British Empire a huge headache. When the Boers had no choice, the Beretta Arms Company, which produced heavy machine guns, became a place for the British to vent their evil fire. The British ambassador, Mr. Mandison, has protested to the Italian government several times against the Beretta Arms Company for selling inhumane weapons such as Maxim heavy machine guns to the Boer rebels. Of course, protest alone was not enough. The British Empire purchased 1,000 Maxim machine guns in one go, which was bound to prevent the Beretta Arms Company from selling this inhumane weapon to the Boers. Of course, where these purchased machine guns will be deployed is a matter of opinion. At least many war reporters have discovered that this inhumane weapon can be seen in various British military strongholds in South Africa. Of course, the dilemma of the British Empire at war with the Boers made many countries happy. At least none of the major powers were unhappy. Of course, just look at the fun of the British Empire. No one dares to make trouble for the British Empire on the Boer issue, at least not openly. I didn't see that even Kaiser Wilhelm II did not dare to make remarks casually. The consequences of saying the wrong thing last time were too serious. No one would suffer a loss and not learn a lesson. Sorry, this sentence seems wrong, because in the Far East, there are people who suffer losses and do not learn a lesson. Your Majesty, this is information sent from the Far East. The Empress Dowager is going crazy. Foreign Minister Bacona hurried in with a telegram. Regarding the unpredictable diplomatic situation in the Far East, Foreign Minister Bacona must admit that his many years of diplomatic experience have been in vain. The Empress Dowager still refused to give in despite the unanimous diplomatic pressure from various countries. What on earth did she rely on to be so confident in resisting the pressure from various countries? Facing the furious Bacona, Carlo was much calmer. He picked up the telegram and looked at it. It was a telegram from Jia Liwen, the Far East minister. It stated that there was currently a group of civil organizations in the Far East that opposed various countries. These ignorant people who called themselves Boxers shouted slogans to eliminate foreigners and swarmed around them. Coming to Xianjin and Beijing Point, the Qing government's attitude was very ambiguous. It didn't care about these ignorant people. Instead, it was prepared to adopt a tacit attitude so that ministers from various countries could feel the Qing government's malicious intentions at the end of the telegram. Minister Jia Liwen believed that the colonial army in Borneo needed to be prepared because a war was very likely to break out. How could Carlo not be familiar with this telegram? Isn't this the famous Zhengzi revolution in history? This ridiculous war, which cost the Qing dynasty 450 million taels of silver in compensation, is absolutely ridiculous. The main reason turned out to be to replace the puppet emperor, which caused the Qing dynasty to pull out its pants. Of course, no one knows yet. Next, the Qing government will use these magic boxing practitioners to test whether the guns of various countries are good at it. In a sense, the Far East would have been carved up long ago if it had not been far away from the major powers. This is the 20th century, and there are still such religious civil groups. Magic techniques such as drawing talismans, chanting incantations, and asking gods to possess them are used to mobilize the people, and holding talisman, chanting incantations, and being possessed by gods is widely publicized to boost fighting spirit. There was nothing Carlo could do about this matter. No one could stop a person from seeking death. Just like Zaie, the Prince of Duan County, who loved his son very much, he was criticized as a young man who did not study, was self-willed, stupid and unlearned, and extremely arrogant. This was not wrong at all. If he hadn't wanted his son to occupy the throne, how could he have ended up being sent to Xinjiang? Of course, regarding this matter, although Carlo sympathized with the suffering of the people in the Far East, he was the king of Italy and would not stop taking action just because of sympathy. He would do whatever he had to do: order the troops to be stationed in Borneo, reorganize their armaments, and be ready for expedition at any time. Waiting for my orders, Carlo called an attendant to issue orders. As the most important Italian colony, Borneo has a colonial garrison of 15,000. When the situation in the Far East changes, it will not be easy to recruit 10,000 people. As for why Carlo is so active, it's not that 450 million taels of silver is too tempting. This battle is like an outing. As long as enough troops are sent, Italy can definitely win a big piece of this big cake. Sometimes, things are just so fucked up. Chapter 448 Research Plan for Lightweight Machine Gun. The Beretta Arms Company, located in Brescia, is a well-known local military industrial enterprise. Beretta Arms Company has produced many weapons over the years, but the most famous weapon is the Maxim heavy machine gun, designed by the chief firearms designer Baron Maxim. Although it was only adopted by Italy at first, as time went by, the prestige of the Maxim heavy machine gun gradually became apparent in various countries. Of course, this has also brought countless orders to Beretta Arms Company, and with the prestige of this weapon, Beretta Arms Company has become one of the two major firearms companies in Italy. Of course, the Beretta Arms Company is very satisfied with the current booming business, but the Beretta people do not just rest on their achievements, and do not want to make progress, but want to develop more new weapons, to make Beretta more prosperous. Pietro Beretta, the new general manager of Beretta Arms Company, fully recognizes this. Therefore, under his leadership, Beretta Weapons Company is very enthusiastic about the development of new weapons in the office building of Beretta Arms Company on Walton Street. Pietro Beretta is constantly busy. Canova, give this document to Director Parlik, and tell them that I have agreed to their development plan for a new revolver. Okay, General Manager. After handing a document signed with his name to the secretary, Pietro rubbed his face and picked up the phone to answer the call. Hey, is this the administrative department? When will the report I want arrive? Tell them to hurry up. I'm waiting. He put down the phone and continued busy when he heard a knock on the door. Come in and put the papers on the table. After Pietro finished speaking, he looked up and realized that the person who came was not from the administrative department, but Baron Maxim, the treasurer of the company. He quickly stood up and said, Uncle Maxim, why are you here? Maxim sat down on the chair, and his loud voice echoed throughout the room. Can't I come? No way, Uncle, you can come anytime, and I'll always welcome you. How could Pietro mess with this great god? The best heavy machine gun currently sold by the company is named after him. Uncle, why don't you recuperate at White Manor? The doctor said you are not well yet. I'm still cultivating. If I continue to cultivate, I don't know if I will have a role in the company's development of new weapons. Hearing Maxim's words with a hint of resentment, Pietro felt regretful in his heart. He had made a mistake. It was a big mistake. It turns out that they had previously investigated the opinions of the armies of various countries on the use of the Maxim heavy machine gun. They generally believed that this was a good gun for defensive positions. With it, the pressure of defense would be much less. If there is any shortcoming, it is that this machine gun is too heavy to charge with the soldiers. In fact, if you think about it, the Maxim heavy machine gun weighs 5 or 60 kilograms. How can it keep up with the attacking speed of the soldiers? Of course, in view of this, Beretta Arms Company has the opportunity to develop a machine gun that can keep up with the speed of infantry. Just at this time, the Ministry of the Army sent a notice that the Italian army planned to purchase a machine gun that could keep up with the soldiers. It required that the empty weight should not exceed 12 kilograms and should be easy to carry. This request from the War Department made Pietro very happy, so he asked the designers to start developing this machine gun. At that time, because Maxim was not in good health and needed to recuperate, Pietro did not notify the company's chief firearms designer. At present, it seems that this was a huge mistake. It would be terrible if it caused the great master to be dissatisfied. Although the Beretta Arms Company is the oldest arms manufacturing company in Europe, and the Beretta family has always been responsible for running the company, the real controller behind the company now is the royal family. Needless to say, the relationship between this great god and the king, and my family also relies on this great god in many places. Uncle Maxim, this is my fault. I didn't think carefully before and just thought of my uncle's cultivation, so this is my mistake. Pietro's words made Maxim's expression soften a lot. He was not an unreasonable person. Before, he was just angry that this kind of new weapon development did not inform him, the chief designer. Now that the other party has apologized, of course he just go down the steps. After seeing Maxim's attitude softening, Pietro continued. Uncle, since you are here, can you help me look at the plan for this weapon development? As he spoke, he took out a draft of a weapon design and handed it to Maxim. As soon as he received the draft, Maxim began to read it. This is a sketch of the gun case. It is different from the gun magazine I use on my heavy machine gun, although this is also a gun magazine, based on the gas-guided principle. The remark comes from the fact that, after he invented the muzzle gas recoil gun magazine, other designers have modified it based on it, and of course this gun magazine is no exception. This was designed by Job and Eager from the design department, because we have considered continuing to use the gun case you designed before, but this time the army's requirements are too high and the important requirements for the gun are very stringent, so we can only re-adopt a design with a smaller kinetic energy. Regarding the army's request for a new machine gun, how could Maxim not know that the 12 kilogram weight requirement does not allow the modification of the Maxim heavy machine gun to be adopted? This is indeed difficult to handle. The weight can only be 12 kilograms at most, which is indeed a bit challenging, isn't that right? Faced with Maxim's words, Pietro immediately spoke. The current opinion of the design department is that the army's requirements can only adopt an air cooling solution. Water cooling does not meet the requirements at all, but if it gets cold, it won't last long. Have you ever considered this issue? Maxim certainly knew the pros and cons of water cooling and air cooling for machine guns, and asked the key questions directly. You must know that although air cooling can reduce the weight of the machine gun, the continuous firing rate of 500 to 600 rounds per minute is destined to overheat the machine tube very quickly. Otherwise, he would be crazy and put a thick cold barrel on the machine gun he designed. Without water cooling, he would not be able to shoot continuously. Faced with Maxim's question, Pietro answered, "We have considered it before, and we have actually discussed a way to solve this problem, which is to change the barrel, replace the barrel. Yes, this is our preliminary idea at present. It still depends on whether the design can be perfected. If not, then we can only use short-term shooting to increase the firepower output time of the new lightweight machine gun. That's right. For Petro, if there is no good solution, then let people adapt to the weapons. After all, this new weapon is so light in weight that it is impossible to achieve the same performance as the Maxim machine gun. Half the performance is enough. Chapter 449. The Japanese also come to buy ships. After entering 1900, Carlo felt that time was even more pressing. Of course, the reason for this feeling was the war that affected the world. Therefore, for this war, Carlo of course had no choice but to be even busier. In addition to handling official documents on weekdays, he also inspected the development of various places in general. Italy is developing well. There are many factories on the edge of the city, and a large number of workers have added many conveniences to the growth of the city. Of course, in this process, there are also some dark side things that appear. Although Carlo can't see it, he doesn't understand it at all. Of course, the inspections were all short term, and he stayed in Rome most of the time, processing various official documents. The same is true for Carlo today. He has been buried in countless official documents, and has not looked up for a long time. Why? After stretching his aching neck, Carlo glanced at the clock on the wall. Unknowingly, it was almost 5 o'clock, and he still hadn't completed much work for the day. Looking at the documents piled up on the table, Carlo could only sigh slightly. Of course, he doesn't have to work so hard, just leave everything to the Prime Minister, and he can take his family on sightseeing trips. But in this case, his control over Italy will also plummet. Think about Tang Xuanzang, who brought about a turning point in the prosperous Tang dynasty. Didn't he just want to enjoy it after working hard for half his life? There is no need to say what the result was in the prosperous Tang dynasty. Tang Xuanzang could still have the wealth to squander it, but Italy in Carlo's hands did not have the qualifications. Not to mention the war more than 10 years later. If Italy didn't make more preparations, how could it get the cake it wanted? Therefore, there is no cure for Carlo's hard-working life. He can only keep working to make Italy's small body stronger, so as not to perform too ugly in the future, and not get what he wants. Just when Carlo wanted to continue immersing himself in work, the guard's voice came from the door. "Your Majesty, the foreign minister has something to see you. Invite him in." Foreign Minister Boccona. The message in his hand was very strange, and he didn't know what to say, but it was his duty to inform His Majesty. "Your Majesty, Japanese Ambassador Teppei Yasawa has made a request to our country to purchase a ship." Boccona's words surprised Carlo, because the Japanese purchase of ships from Italy was a bit too fantasy, wasn't it? Don't blame Carlo for thinking so. Take a look at Japan's foreign purchases of warships in history. We won't talk about it in the early Meiji period. After the Japan-British Treaty of Commerce and Navigation was signed with the United Kingdom, Japan's foreign purchases were all British warships. At this time, he suddenly proposed to purchase Italian warships. What the hell is this? By the way, what kind of warship does Japan want to purchase? Although it felt a bit incredible, Carlo still asked what warships Japan planned to purchase. As soon as he finished asking, he picked up the cold coffee on the table and prepared to moisten his throat. Facing Carlo's question, Boccona immediately answered. "The Japanese government wants to buy 2 of our Garibaldi-class cruisers." Cough. Cough cough. Carlo was really shocked by the news. Does Japan have the money to buy the Garibaldi class? You must know that, although the Garibaldi stage is good, its price is definitely not cheap. The external quotation price of the Garibaldi class is 34 million lire, 13.6 million yen. This is definitely the most expensive cruise ship in the world. The price is higher than that of a battleship. The navies of various countries who are impressed by the amazing performance of the Garibaldi need to think twice before buying the Garibaldi class. Except Americans. Therefore, even though the Garibaldi level is so popular, there are only a handful of people who dare to ask the price. How can little Japan, which is tightening its belt, get the money to buy a Garibaldi class? The Japanese rich? Carlo asked his doubts bluntly. Regarding his monarch's rude attitude, Boccona thought for a while and replied, From what Japanese ambassador Tepeyasawa said, I feel that he should have the money, otherwise he would not ask. Well, Bacona is euphemistically reminding his monarch that there is no need to look down on the other party so much. After all, the other party is still a customer. Why do the Japanese want to buy our warships? Regarding Carlo's question, Bacona thought about it and answered, Your Majesty, it may be because of the performance of the Garibaldi class. Russia has so many patrols in the Far East, and Japan is an island country. It may be because it wants to prevent Russian patrols from invading its coastal areas. It is a bit difficult for a foreign minister to analyze Japan's plan to purchase ships. However, Carlo does not think this is the whole reason for Bacona's analysis. Maybe there is a reason for this, but it must be more than that. Let's check it out. In the eyes of the outside world, Italy is a model of selling for money, but only Carlo knows that Italy's arms sales are the result of careful consideration. Of course, there's nothing wrong with Italy's reputation as a money-loving country. At least everyone knows that you can sell things for money, and many things will be much easier to handle. The results of the investigation came out within a few days. Seeing this unexpected result, not only Carlo was a little bit dumbfounded, but also Bacona. It is true that the Japanese purchased warships not only for the threat of the Russians, but also in an attempt to draw closer relations with Italy. That's right, the little Japanese's habit of not remembering what to eat is showing up. How could they forget the Italians who beat themselves up 5 or 6 years ago? Facing the threat from Russia this time, Japan not only continued to replenish its strength, but also took into account its own failure in the Sino-Japanese War of 1884 to 1894. Although there are reasons why Italians are jealous of money, why did they not consider the possibility of the other party's intervention? Yes, Japan had a lot of unwillingness to do with that war, but no matter how much unwillingness it had, it could only hold it in. Japan, which has learned its lesson, is smarter this time and plans to purchase 2 Garibaldi ships for patrol purposes, to bring the two countries closer. Why Garibaldi class? On the one hand, as Bacona said, Japan is very wary of the many patrols of the Russian Far East fleet, fearing that they will disturb its own homeland. After all, most of the island countries rely on ships for transportation. No one can bear the enemy ships coming from time to time. Purchasing 2 of the world's most advanced patrol ships can be used to restrain the other party. After all, no matter in terms of firepower, speed, or protection, none of the Russian patrol equipment in the Far East is worthy of the Garibaldi class. Secondly, they all said it was about getting closer to each other, especially after getting the news that Russia was building 2 battleships in Italy. The Japanese government is even more determined to purchase 2 Italian warships, even if it means spending money on them. After all, it had only been 5 or 6 years since the Sino-Japanese War, so how could the Meiji officials really forget this lesson? Of course, the Japanese government still has a lot of money, but it is simply not enough for this amount of money. It doesn't matter that the government doesn't have enough money, there are other ways to do it. Emperor Meiji, our little weight loss expert, once again stood up and called on everyone to donate. For this reason, he will only eat 1 meal a day until the money for the ship purchase is completed. Under the leadership of the emperor, the Japanese people even donated more enthusiastically. In just 1 month, more than 4 million yen were raised, which is really impressive. After learning about Japan's actual intentions, Carlo had more ideas about Japan's application to purchase warships. Sorry, I wrote this a bit late and kept everyone waiting. Chapter 450 Loans from Italy. Nani, Tepeyasawa, who is the Japanese ambassador to Italy, looked at Bacona in front of him and asked Bacona in front of him with an uncertain face, Your Excellency Bacona, are you saying that your country is willing to provide loans to our country? Don't blame Ambassador Tepeyasawa for asking this, because from every aspect, it is impossible for Italy to provide them with loans. You must know that Italians' reputation for wanting money rather than their lives is known not only to European countries, but also to other places. Now the Italians are actually willing to provide them with loans, which seems a bit weird, no matter how you look at it. Seeing the disbelieving expression on the Japanese ambassador's face, Bacona couldn't help but think of his own expression when he first heard the news, which was similar to the Japanese ambassador's. Your Excellency Tepeyasawa, you heard it right. Our country is indeed willing to provide loans to your country, but the interest will be a little higher, and the annual interest rate is 1 cent. In addition, there are restrictions on loan purchases, and they can only be used to purchase our products. But Kona's answer shocked Asoatepe, because the loan interest rate was too high. Even if Japan borrowed money from the British Empire, the interest rate was only 7.5%. The loan interest rate given by Italy was also too high. Your Excellency Bacona, the loan interest rate offered by your country is too high, and our country will definitely not accept it. Ambassador Days, you should inform your government first. In addition, the minimum loan provided by our country is 200 million lire, and the maximum term is 10 years. Seeing that the Italians were so persistent, Asoatepe could only send this request back to Tokyo. Originally it was just a ship purchase, but it turned out that something like this would happen. Faced with the news from Ambassador Teppei Asawa, the Japanese government immediately summoned its ministers to discuss it. Everyone, these are the loan conditions for Italians. Let's take a look. Prime Minister Ito Hirobumi looked at the ministers gathered together and distributed Italy's loan conditions to everyone present. This is the third time that Prime Minister Ito has formed a cabinet to take up the post of Prime Minister. This time he is very anxious to take office as the Prime Minister because it is very difficult to form a cabinet. This time, the Rikensei Friendship Association he founded finally got the opportunity to form a cabinet, but the Rikensei Friendship Association fell into disputes, which made him feel even more anxious. After a while of flipping through the pages, the Tibetan Prime Minister Kunatake Watanabe immediately spoke. Prime Minister, the borrowing interest in Italy is too high. We should not borrow. According to my estimation, if you borrow Italy's minimum loan of 200 million lire, you will need to pay back 320 million lire to Italians in at least 10 years. The interest rate is too high, and it is not suitable for borrowing at all. After the Tibetan Prime Minister opened his mouth, there was an immediate echo. Yes, the interest rate is too high. Everyone knows the financial situation of our country. I think it's better to forget about the Italian money. It's not as good as the British money. After hearing such remarks, even the emperor, who was sitting high on the throne, showed an unpleasant expression. Seeing that the situation was about to descend into opposition, Ito Hirobumi slammed the table in front of him. The huge sound startled everyone present, and even Meiji could not maintain the majesty of the emperor. Confused, you people only see this loan, and have not seen the deeper aspects of this loan. Are you still an important minister of the empire, or a cabinet minister who can hold great power? Facing the furious Ito Hirobumi, whether it was Foreign Minister Aoki Shuzo, the Tibetan Prime Minister Kunatake Watanabe, or Katsuhiro Taro, who had served as Prime Minister for many years, or even others, they were all stunned by the furious look of Ito Hirobumi. In their knowledge, this evergreen figure in politics has never been so angry. The Prime Minister might as well speak up if he has something to say. Zyangshan Matobe saw that this stalemate would not end well in the future, so he had no choice but to give everyone some advice. In response to Yamamoto Gonbo's words, Ito Hirobumi gave him a grateful look. None of these bastards are safe. They are all waiting to make a fool of themselves. Right. Hirobumi Ito, who was originally only 3 points angry, now had 8 points. The loan provided by the Italians this time is obviously a high interest loan, and it can only purchase Italian goods. It is not a worthwhile loan. But don't you see that this is not just a loan? This is a guarantee from the Italians not to interfere in the fight between our country and Russia. I think everyone present, no one wants Italy to get involved in the fight between our country and Russia, right? When faced with Ito Hirobumi, who among the important ministers present is an idiot, who wants to see an Italian suddenly appear next to him in the middle of an all-out war with the Russians? But why no one pointed it out? But the issue of too high interest rates continues. Some people really have ulterior motives and deserve to be punished. No matter what other people are thinking now. After Hirobumi Ito pointed out that the loan from the Italians was a goodwill move, others can no longer act stupid. The Prime Minister is right. This loan is not just a simple loan, but a goodwill. I think since the Italians said that the loan cannot be less than 200 million lire, then according to me, you can borrow as much as you want. Anyway, if the Italians don't want our country to go bankrupt, then they can't favor the Russians. They can only help us. Asshole, you can borrow as much as you want. Do you think you don't have to pay it back? Where does the collateral come from? How can you repay the interest of 1 cent per year? The Tibetan Prime Minister, Kunatake Watanabe, suddenly stood up and scolded these words. Although it sounded very tempting, these words were extremely harmful to the finances. I can borrow as much money as I want. Do I not have to pay back the money? There is only so much government revenue every year, and the annual payment of interest and principal alone accounts for 1/3 of Japan's total fiscal revenue. This is a very high figure point. In fact, Japan's finances are now more difficult than in history. The reason is simply that Japan failed to obtain 200 million taels of silver compensation from the Qing dynasty, and the war losses were greater. Although it finally won North Korea with the help of the British, Japan's finances were even more difficult. Point of course, Japan's financial difficulties are not without solutions. In view of the financial pressure, the Japanese government has currently mobilized millions of men and women to work abroad. Therefore, these men and women working hard for Japan can be seen in the Far East, Southeast Asia, South Asia, and even America and Europe. Of course, the easiest thing to see are young girls in Japan, these promiscuous women who are encouraged by the government to devote themselves to the country. Who can think of who will take her in when they are old and golden? I think that since the Italians are willing to lend us money, it would be better to lend more. 300 million lire is a very appropriate number. I believe the Italians will give us a satisfactory result. Having said this, Ito Hirobumi turned to the foreign minister. Foreign Minister Aoki, I leave it to you to negotiate with Italy. I dare not. I will definitely live up to my trust. Aoki. Shuzan quickly stood up and bowed in reply. Mantau is here to wish everyone a happy new year. We will not take a vacation during the spring festival and will keep updating. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.